Shy janitor stayed late to fix a broken wheelchair ramp. Next morning, 300 Harleys blocked the school in silence. At 11:41 p.m., the school was supposed to be empty, yet Martin Hale was still on his knees in the rain, tightening bolts on a wheelchair ramp that the district had scheduled to fix for 3 months. A girl's hands clung to her chair's wheels at the top landing, her face tight with panic, because one slip meant concrete. Before we continue, tell us in the comments where you are watching this from. Martin, everyone called him Marty when they remembered he existed, kept his head down and worked like the world wasn't watching. That was his safest setting. Head down, hoodie up, tool bag open, hands busy. Ridgeview High looked different at night. In the day, it was a place of banners and trophies and pep rallies. After dark, it was a hollow shell of polished floors and locked doors, a building that breathed through vents and flickering exit signs. The kind of place that made every sound travel too far. The clink of a wrench, the pop of a distant thermostat, the slap of rain against glass. Marty had planned to leave at 9. He always planned to leave on time. But plans didn't survive Ridgeview. Earlier that afternoon, he'd watched the principal, Dr. Warren Klein, stride through the front lobby with a donor in a blazer, talking loudly about accessibility upgrades and community values. Marty had been 3 feet away buffing scuff marks off the tile. Klein didn't look at him once, not even the quick guilty glance people gave when they realized they'd ignored another human being. Then Marty's radio crackled near the end of his shift. Not a teacher, not security. A student voice, small and strained, coming from the front entrance. "Hello? Is anyone still here?" Marty paused in the hallway with his mop. The building was supposed to be locked down, but that voice came again, softer. "Please, I can't." He followed the sound toward the front doors, his shoes squeaking on the waxed floor. The entrance vestibule was dim, lit by the buzz of overhead fluorescence that made everything look sickly. Outside, the rain came down in sheets, pooling on the walkway and turning the parking lot into a black mirror. And there, at the top of the front ramp, was a girl in a wheelchair. She wasn't little, maybe 15, 16, but in that moment she looked smaller than she was, because fear does that. Her jacket was too thin for the weather. Her dark hair stuck to her cheeks. One hand gripped the metal rail, the other hovered over her wheel like she could will the chair to float. The ramp's lower hinge had twisted out of alignment again. The whole thing sat at a slight angle, like a bad smile. The bottom lip caught on a warped strip of metal. If she tried to roll down, the chair would hit, jerk, and the wheels could slide sideways on the slick surface. Marty knew that ramp like he knew the crease lines in his hands. He'd filed incident reports. He'd left notes for the district maintenance crew. He'd even sent photos to the facilities email, because someone told him that helped. The replies, when they came, were always the same. Ticket received, scheduled, pending. Meanwhile, students still had to get in and out. "Hey," Marty said, voice low, as if the building might scold him for speaking. He stepped under the awning, rain misting his face. "Don't move." The girl's eyes snapped to him, sharp, guarded, embarrassed to be caught needing help. "I'm fine," she said immediately, the way proud people lie. Marty nodded like he believed her, because that was what you did when someone was hanging onto their dignity by a thread. "Just stay put. I'm going to look." He crouched at the bottom of the ramp. Water ran off the metal and onto his sleeves. The hinge plate had shifted again. Somebody had hit it. Delivery cart, snowplow, who knows, and the bolts weren't seated flush. The traction strip was peeled in one corner, a hazard disguised as a half-fix. Marty glanced back at the glass doors. "Where's your ride?" She swallowed. "My mom got stuck on the freeway. She said she'd be 10 minutes. It's been..." She looked away. "My phone died." Marty felt something tighten in his chest. Not anger yet. Anger was loud and messy. This was quieter. This was the familiar heaviness of watching the same people get put at risk, because it was easier to delay than to do. "You're in the right spot," he said. "You did good. You waited." The girl stared at him like she wasn't used to hearing that from adults. "It's just a ramp," she muttered. Marty set his tool bag on the wet pavement and unzipped it. His fingers moved without hesitation. Wrench, socket, flashlight in his mouth. The kind of work where your hands knew what to do even when your thoughts didn't. He loosened the outer bolts first. The metal groaned as he shifted the plate back into place. Rain hammered the awning. His knuckles slipped once and pain flashed up his hand, sharp and hot, but he didn't react. He never reacted. Reacting drew attention. The girl leaned forward slightly. "Are you supposed to be doing that?" Marty exhaled through his nose. "I'm supposed to do a lot of things. Most of them don't get done unless I do them." That earned him the tiniest crack in her expression, almost a smile, gone before it landed. Inside the lobby, a motion sensor clicked and a light came on. For a second, Marty thought security had noticed, but it was just the building doing what it did, waking up for no reason. He tightened the first bolt and tested the hinge with his weight. It still had play. The bracket itself might be bent. Marty pulled the flashlight out of his mouth. "What's your name?" The question seemed to surprise her, like he'd asked for something personal. "Ava," she said after a beat. "Ava Callahan." "Marty," he said, because it felt wrong to keep her in the dark while she knew his. "Just, Marty." Ava's eyes flicked to his hands again, the tools, the sure movements. "You do this a lot." He didn't answer. He didn't want to admit how many nights he'd stayed late fixing problems the school pretended weren't emergencies until someone got hurt. The hinge gave a dull clank as he shifted it, then a cleaner, tighter sound as it settled. Marty tightened the remaining bolts in a cross pattern. He tore a strip of industrial grip tape from his bag, his own supply, bought with his own money months ago, and pressed it down where the traction strip had peeled, smoothing it with his thumb until it sealed. Ava watched all of it, silent now. Not because she didn't have words, because something about watching a stranger care when the institution didn't made words feel risky. Marty stood and wiped rain off his forehead with his sleeve. "All right, I'm going to test it. If it holds me, it'll hold you." He stepped onto the ramp, shifting his weight deliberately. The metal flexed once, then stabilized. The bottom lip stayed flush, no catching, no jerk. He walked down, then back up again, slow, listening for that ugly grinding sound that meant failure. But it was clean, solid. He nodded. "You're good." Ava's shoulders dropped like she'd been holding them up for an hour. She rolled forward cautiously, hands tight on the wheels. The chair moved down the ramp without snagging, without tilting, smooth as it should have been from day one. When she reached the bottom, she stopped and stared back up at it like it was a miracle she didn't trust yet. "Thank you," she said, and this time it wasn't pride. It was real. Marty shrugged, trying to make the moment smaller than it was. "No problem." A car turned into the lot, headlights sweeping across wet asphalt. It wasn't a parent sedan creeping in nervously. It moved with a heavy, deliberate ease, like it belonged anywhere it went. Dark truck, older model, engine low. Ava's face changed the second she saw it. Relief, but also something else. Respect. The truck stopped near the curb. The driver's door opened. A man stepped out into the rain. He didn't rush. He didn't wave. He just walked toward them with the slow certainty of someone who'd spent a lifetime not needing permission. He was older, late 50s, maybe 60s, but broad in the shoulders, built like a man who still carried weight even when he didn't have to. Gray in his beard, leather jacket, no bright colors, no showy patches that Marty could see in the dark, just worn black leather and hands that looked like they'd tightened more than bolts in their time. Ava said quietly, "That's my dad." Marty's throat went dry. He didn't know why. He'd met plenty of parents, but something about this man's presence made the air feel tighter. The man reached Ava first. He crouched beside her chair, checked the wet on her shoulders, his hand careful and practiced. "You all right, kid?" Ava nodded. "I'm fine. The ramp was messed up again. Marty fixed it." The older man's eyes lifted to Marty. They were pale and steady and too aware, like they took in the whole world and decided what mattered. Marty instinctively stepped back under the awning, suddenly conscious of how he looked. Soaked hoodie, cheap work pants, hands nicked and red. "Sir," Marty said, because it came out automatically. The man didn't respond with a greeting. He looked past Marty at the ramp, then back at Marty's tool bag. "How long's that been broken?" the man asked Ava, but his gaze stayed on Marty. Ava hesitated. "A while." Marty could hear the truth behind that, long enough that people had stopped expecting it to change. The man nodded once, slow. And they still let kids use it. Marty opened his mouth, then closed it. He didn't want to complain. Complaining always came back on him. He'd seen it happen. A complaint became a performance issue. A report became attitude. The older man rose. Rain streamed off his sleeves. He held out his hand to Marty. Marty stared at it like it was a trick. No one at Ridgeview offered him a hand. They offered him instructions. They offered him blame. Finally, Marty wiped his palm on his pants and took it. The grip was firm, not crushing, just certain. "Thank you," the man said, voice low, "for staying." Marty swallowed. It's my job." The man's eyes didn't blink. "That wasn't your job. That was you." Ava watched them, quiet, like she was seeing two worlds touch. The man released Marty's hand and guided Ava toward the truck. Before she climbed in, she looked back over her shoulder and said, "My dad doesn't forget things." Marty gave a small, awkward nod, like he didn't know what to do with that sentence. The truck door shut. The engine rumbled. As it pulled away, Marty caught one last detail in the sweep of the headlights, an emblem stamped into the older man's belt buckle, a simple metal mark that meant nothing to Marty but looked like it had history. Then the truck disappeared into the rain. Marty stood alone under the awning, listening to the building behind him hum like it didn't care. He looked up at the ramp, straight now, steady, safe, and felt that quiet heaviness return, because fixing one thing didn't erase the fact that it had been left broken in the first place. He packed his tools, locked the front doors, and started his walk back down the empty hallway toward the custodian's closet. Somewhere far beyond the school, in the wet darkness, a deeper kind of engine rumbled once, then cut out like someone had decided to stay quiet. Marty didn't sleep much, not because the rain kept him up, but because that handshake wouldn't leave his skin. He woke before his alarm, lay staring at the ceiling of his one bedroom, listening to the old radiator tick like it was counting down to something. The kind of apartment you rented when you wanted to take up as little space in the world as possible. A sagging couch, a small table, work boots lined up by the door like they belonged to someone else. His phone sat dead on the counter. He'd plugged it in, but the cord was frayed, and at some point in the night, the connection had slipped out. When he finally powered it on, the screen lit with 2 notifications from the same district email address. Facilities. Automation, ticket update. Facilities. Automation, ticket update. Marty's stomach tightened. He opened the first. Ticket number RV1187, front entrance ramp hinge misalignment. Status changed to closed. Reason, duplicate request. He blinked, confused, then opened the second. Ticket number RV1192, front entrance ramp traction strip deterioration. Status changed to closed. Reason, will be addressed in future capital improvements. Closed, future. Same song. He stared at the words until they stopped looking like words and started looking like a joke. At 6:12 a.m., he was already walking toward Ridgeview with his hood up, wind pushing mist into his face. The sky was still gray and heavy, the kind of dawn that didn't feel like a beginning. He cut through the side lot where teachers parked later in the morning. Empty now. Quiet. The front doors were still locked. He keyed in and stepped into the lobby where the smell of wax and disinfectant hit him like a wall. Everything looked normal. Too normal. The polished trophy cases, the banners, the framed photos of smiling students who'd never had to think about ramps. He hung his coat in the custodian's closet, grabbed his radio, and started his routine. And then he saw it. A bright orange sign, zip-tied to the handrail at the top of the ramp. Temporarily out of service. Please use side entrance. Marty stopped so hard his shoes squeaked. Out of service, the ramp he'd fixed. He stepped closer, eyes scanning for damage like he'd see something bent again. But the hinge was still tight. The grip tape was still pressed down clean. The ramp was safer than it had been in months. So why the sign? His radio crackled, a sharp voice, already annoyed, cutting through the morning quiet. Hail, front lobby, now. It was Ron Desire, the head of maintenance for the district, technically Marty's supervisor, practically his warden. Ron was the kind of man who carried a clipboard like a weapon and used rules like he'd invented them. Marty's mouth went dry. He unzipped his tool bag on instinct, like having tools near him made him less vulnerable. He walked into the lobby. Ron was there with Dr. Warren Klein, the principal, and a woman Marty didn't recognize. Tailored pantsuit, tablet in hand, the kind of person whose shoes never touched dirty floors. Klein's tie was perfect. His hair was perfect. His smile was the kind you practiced. Ron didn't smile at all. "Explain," Ron said. Marty glanced at Klein, then back to Ron. "The ramp was misaligned again. There was a student—" Ron cut him off. "Did I authorize repairs?" "It wasn't a repair," Marty said carefully. "It was tightening the hinge plate and replacing a traction strip. Temporary, so nobody—" Klein's smile twitched. "So nobody gets hurt," he finished, voice pleasant as glass. "How noble." Marty felt heat crawl up his neck. "It was dangerous," he said. "Anyone in a chair could have—" "And if it failed after you touched it?" Ron snapped. "If someone got hurt, whose liability is that, Marty?" Marty opened his mouth, but the words didn't come. Because in a perfect world, the answer would be the schools, the districts, the people who ignored the ticket for months. But in the real world, blame ran downhill, and Marty was already at the bottom. The woman with the tablet spoke for the first time. "I'm Dana Wexler," she said, not looking at Marty like he was a person. "Risk management. We got notified of an unauthorized modification to an accessibility structure. That's a compliance issue." Compliance issue, not safety issue, not human issue. Marty's hands curled at his sides. "I used grip tape," he said. "Industrial. Same kind the district orders. It's not—" Ron stepped closer. "You do not touch ramps. You do not touch elevators. You do not touch anything that falls under ADA infrastructure without a work order and a licensed contractor. You understand?" Marty's throat tightened. "A student was stuck up there," he said, voice lower now. "In the rain." Klein tilted his head. "A student was stuck," he repeated, making it sound dramatic and inconvenient. "Yet somehow she made it home." Marty's eyes flicked to the security camera above the vestibule. It stared down like an unblinking witness. "She could have fallen," Marty said. Dana Wexler tapped her tablet. "Going forward, the ramp will remain out of service until contracted repairs are made." Marty stared at her. "But the side entrance is accessible," Klein said smoothly. "We have an alternative." Marty knew the side entrance, a narrow ramp by the cafeteria that was technically accessible if someone remembered to unlock the door. Half the staff didn't even know where the button was. He swallowed. "That door's locked most of the time." Ron's eyes hardened. "Not your problem. Your problem is you did work you weren't assigned." Marty felt the familiar urge to shrink, to apologize, to fold himself into the floor and disappear. But Ava's face flashed in his mind, hands gripping her wheels, jaw tight, trying not to beg. He forced himself to say it. "It is my problem if someone gets hurt." Klein's smile vanished for the first time. "You're a custodian," he said, quiet, controlled, each word sharpened. "Your job is to clean. Do not confuse that with policy." The silence that followed was worse than yelling. The building hummed around them, vents whispering, lights buzzing like it was listening. Ron pointed at Marty's tool bag. "You're writing an incident report. You're also getting a formal warning. One more stunt like this and you're gone." Marty's jaw clenched so hard his teeth ached. He nodded once, because nodding was safer than arguing. Klein turned to Dana, his polished voice back in place. "We'll address the situation internally," he said. "Our staff sometimes oversteps, but we are fully committed to accessibility." Committed, Marty thought, as they zip-tied an out-of-service sign onto the only ramp most students could actually use. Ron jabbed a finger toward the hallway. "Report, now." Marty walked away, shoulders tight, hearing them talk behind him as if he wasn't there. He sat in the custodian's office with a blank form and a cheap pen, staring at lines that asked for date and description and action taken. His hand hovered over the paper. "What do you write when the truth gets you fired?" He wrote the safe version. Observed misalignment at ramp hinge, student presence noted, tightened bolts and applied temporary traction strip to reduce slip hazard, no further incident. He hesitated, then added one line, small and plain. Ramp has had ongoing issues, multiple tickets submitted previously. He stared at that last sentence like it might ignite the paper. Then he signed his name. By 7:30, the first teachers started arriving. Cars rolled in, doors slammed, voices echoed. Ridgeview woke up. Marty kept his head down and moved through the lobby with a mop like none of it mattered. The out-of-service sign sat there like a slap. At 8:05, he saw a wheelchair student approach the front ramp from the sidewalk. Another kid, younger, with a backpack and a tired face. The student stopped at the sign, looked around, confused, then turned toward the side path that cut along the building. Marty's stomach dropped. He followed at a distance, not close enough to look like he was hovering, just close enough to see what happened. The side entrance ramp was steeper, cracked in places. The door at the top was shut. There was a buzzer but no sign telling you it existed. The student pressed it once. Nothing. Pressed again. Still nothing. Marty looked around. No one else was there yet. The kid tried to back up and angle their chair to reposition on the slope. The wheels slipped slightly on wet concrete. Marty moved faster. Before he could reach the door, it clicked open from inside. A cafeteria worker leaned out, annoyed, as if the student had interrupted something important. "Use the other entrance," the worker said. "This is the one the sign says," the student replied, voice tight. The worker sighed like the kid was being difficult, then pulled the door wider. The student maneuvered through, wheels bumping over the threshold. Marty stood at the bottom of the ramp, staring up at the cracked concrete, feeling something ugly settle in his chest. This wasn't about safety. This was about appearances. At 8:22, a dark truck rolled into the parking lot and stopped near the front curb. Older model, heavy. Marty recognized it immediately. Ava was in the passenger seat. The driver stepped out. The older man from last night. He didn't wear a suit. He wore the same worn black leather jacket. But in daylight, Marty could see more. Scars on his hands, a ring that looked like it had been melted and reshaped, eyes that didn't miss details. He opened the passenger door and helped Ava down with a practiced ease, checking her chair, adjusting her backpack straps. Not a man guessing his way through fatherhood. A man who'd learned. Ava spotted the orange sign at the top of the front ramp. Her face hardened. The older man followed her gaze. He stared at the sign for a long moment, then looked at the ramp itself. Straight, solid, safe. His jaw tightened slightly, as if something inside him clicked into place. He guided Ava toward the side path without a word. Marty watched from the lobby windows, mop frozen in his hands. He saw them reach the side entrance. He saw the door stay closed. He saw Ava's father press the buzzer once, then wait, not moving. When nobody answered, he pressed it again. Still nothing. Ava looked up at him, embarrassed, angry. Marty could see it even through glass. And then Ava's father did something that made Marty's pulse spike. He didn't bang on the door. He didn't shout. He simply reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out his phone, and made a call. He spoke briefly, too far away for Marty to hear, and ended it. Then he leaned down to Ava and said something to her. Ava nodded once. The door finally opened, and they went inside. Marty exhaled slowly, unaware he'd been holding his breath. At 8:41, the first low rumble reached the school. Not loud, not aggressive, just a vibration in the air, like distant thunder that didn't belong to the sky. Marty's head lifted. Teachers didn't notice yet. Students didn't notice yet. The building kept buzzing and breathing like always, but Marty felt it in the floor, under his shoes. He turned toward the front doors. Across the wet road at the far edge of the campus, the first motorcycle appeared, black, chrome dulled by weather, rider upright. Then another, then 3 more, spaced evenly, moving slow, not revving, not weaving, just rolling forward like a line that had decided where it was going. Marty stepped closer to the glass, his mop forgotten as the quiet thunder multiplied and the school's morning noise began to swallow itself. The line of bikes reached the entrance drive and didn't stop. It kept coming. The sound didn't get louder the way a parade does. It got wider. One rumble became 10, then 50, an expanding vibration that spread across the wet campus like pressure building under ice. Marty stood at the lobby windows, staring through the glass as motorcycle after motorcycle rolled into the entrance drive at the same measured pace. No one revved, no one did circles, no one showed off. They moved with discipline. The first riders turned left and lined up along the curb. The next group fanned out across the visitor parking spots. More bikes slipped in behind them and stopped with the same clean timing. Tires straight, kickstands down, engines cut. The sudden quiet after the engines shut off felt unnatural, like the air had been unplugged. And they kept coming. Students started noticing before teachers did. A couple of kids walking up the sidewalk slowed, then stopped completely, eyes wide. Phones came out. Someone whispered, loud enough that Marty could see their mouth form the word even through the glass. Harleys. The school's front entrance, usually a place of sleepy arrivals and parents double parking, transformed in minutes into something else, an organized blockade that didn't need chains or cones. The bikes themselves were the barrier. By 8:47, the first school bus turned in from the main road, yellow and lumbering, and had to brake hard when it saw the mass of motorcycles filling the drive. The bus driver honked once out of reflex. Nobody reacted. The bikers didn't even look over. The bus sat there, idling, unable to pull forward. A second bus arrived behind it, then a third. The line backed up onto the street. Inside the building, the normal morning chatter began to wobble. Secretaries at the front desk looked up. A teacher passing through the lobby slowed and stared out the windows like she'd walked into the wrong movie. Marty's radio crackled again, sharp and impatient. "Hale, what the hell's going on out there?" Ron Desair's voice. Marty didn't answer right away because he didn't have an answer that wouldn't sound insane. He leaned closer to the glass. The riders were dismounting now. Men and women, most of them in dark jackets, some in denim vests over hoodies, boots on wet pavement. A few had helmets tucked under their arms. Others left them on. They didn't cluster like a mob. They stood in lines in small groups facing the building, spaced like they'd done this before. And still, no one spoke. The silence was the loudest part. Marty pressed the radio button. "There's a lot of motorcycles, Ron." There was a pause, like Ron was deciding whether to explode. "Don't get cute. How many?" Marty's eyes swept the drive. More were still rolling in, turning, stopping, cutting engines. The number kept climbing. "I don't know," Marty said. "A couple hundred." Ron swore into the radio, then the line went dead. Dr. Klein appeared in the lobby a minute later, moving fast but trying to look calm. He had that same polished suit, that same perfect hair, but the tightness around his mouth betrayed him. Behind him, Dana Wexler from Risk Management held her tablet like a shield. Two security staff hovered, looking like they wanted to vanish into the walls. Klein didn't look at Marty at first. He stared at the scene outside, then turned to the front desk secretary. "Call the district office, now." The secretary's fingers flew over the phone. Dana Wexler spoke quietly. "We may need law enforcement." Klein's jaw flexed. "We have resource officers." One of the security staff, a younger man with a badge clipped to his belt, swallowed. "Sir, that's not a couple bikes. That's a lot of bikes." Klein's eyes snapped at him. "Thank you for the update." Marty stood a few feet away, mop handle in his hand like it was the only thing keeping him upright. He wanted to step back into the hall and disappear, but he couldn't stop watching. A fourth bus honked, twice. The sound was swallowed by the wet air and the sheer mass of parked bikes. Still no reaction. Then, like an invisible signal, several riders moved at once toward the edge of the drive where the buses were stuck. They didn't approach aggressively. They didn't gesture. They simply stood there, hands at their sides, bodies angled toward the buses, forcing the drivers to stop moving forward. The blockade became complete. A student voice behind Marty whispered, "Are we in trouble?" He turned and saw a small group of kids gathered inside the lobby now, faces pressed toward the glass, eyes huge with excitement and fear. One of them, freshman maybe, was recording already. Marty lowered his voice. "Go to class." The kid looked at him like he hadn't heard. Klein noticed the students, and his expression shifted into that practiced principal mode, control through tone. He walked toward them, smiling tightly. "All right, everyone, head to first period. We'll handle this." A girl with braces pointed at the motorcycles. "Handle what? That looks like a gang." Dana's eyes flicked toward Klein, warning him to be careful with words. Klein's smile didn't move. "It's a community gathering. Go to class." "Community doesn't block buses," the girl muttered, but she backed away. Outside, more riders had stopped arriving. The mass was settled now, stretching from the entrance drive into the visitor lot and beyond. Marty realized they weren't randomly parked. They were arranged to close every access point to the front doors and the driveway while leaving the sidewalks open. People could walk in. Vehicles couldn't. It felt intentional, controlled, and that scared him more than chaos would have. At 8:53, the first police cruiser pulled up to the backed-up buses, lights flashing but siren off. The officer stepped out, one hand hovering near his belt, and scanned the bikers. He looked like a man realizing he was outnumbered before he'd even said hello. Two riders stepped forward to meet him. They didn't surround him. They stood still, hands visible, letting him approach them instead. From the lobby, Marty couldn't hear what was said, but he could see the officer's posture change as the conversation went on, stiff at first, then uncertain, then cautious. He glanced back at the school like he was trying to decide who the real problem was. A second cruiser arrived, then a third. Klein watched the police, shoulders tightening. He turned sharply toward Ron, who had just hustled into the lobby, face red, tie crooked, rain on his jacket. Ron didn't bother with pleasantries. "This is because of last night," he hissed at Marty, like Marty had personally invited them. Marty stared at him. "Because I tightened bolts?" "You touched ADA infrastructure," Dana cut in, hearing just enough. "This could be a protest, a lawsuit, media. We are exposed." Klein snapped. "Ron, get them off campus." Ron barked a humorless laugh. "Get them off campus? With what, a strongly worded email?" Klein's nostrils flared. "We have police." Dana's eyes were glued to her tablet. "Police are already here. They're talking." Klein looked back out the window, and for the first time, Marty saw something close to fear cross the principal's face. Because the bikers weren't moving for the police weren't moving them. And the school was slowly filling with students who couldn't stop staring. At 9:01, the first local news van turned onto the road. Marty recognized it by the logo on the side. Someone must have tipped them. Someone always did. A reporter climbed out, hair pinned back against the damp, and raised a microphone while a camera operator started filming the line of Harleys like it was a spectacle. Klein swore under his breath. The mask slipped again. Marty took a step backward, instinct screaming at him to get away from the windows. This was going to land on someone, and he could already feel the weight of blame shifting in the air like a storm front looking for the weakest roof. Then Ava appeared in the lobby. She came through the side corridor near the cafeteria, rolling fast, jaw set, cheeks flushed like she'd been holding anger in her mouth all morning. Her backpack bounced against her chair. Her eyes were locked on the orange out-of-service sign, zip-tied to the ramp rail outside. She saw Marty. For a second, her face softened. Not much, just enough to recognize him. Then she rolled closer, lowering her voice like she didn't want anyone else to hear. "They shut it down," she said, voice tight with disbelief. "They actually shut it down after you fixed it." Marty's throat tightened. "They said I wasn't authorized." Ava's hands clenched on her wheels. Authorized? She spat the word like it tasted bad. "So their solution is to make everyone go around back like it's a secret?" Marty glanced toward Klein and Dana. "Ava, you should—" Ava cut him off. "My dad's outside." Marty's stomach dropped. "Your dad called them." Ava looked at him like it was obvious. "He didn't call them. He called one person. And then this happened." She gestured toward the sea of bikes outside. A silent wall. Marty felt lightheaded. "Who is your dad?" Ava hesitated, then said, "He's someone people listen to." That wasn't an answer, and it was an answer. Klein's eyes landed on Ava, then on Marty standing near her, and something in him sharpened. He walked over fast, smile back on, but brittle. "Ava," he said, voice syrupy, "we're going to need you to go to class." Ava didn't flinch. "Why did you close the ramp?" Klein's smile tightened. "Safety reasons." Ava's gaze flicked to Marty. "It was safe last night." Ron snapped, "Don't drag him into this." Ava's eyes flashed. "He's already in it." Dana stepped forward, smooth and cold. "Ava, the ramp is under review, please." Ava cut her off. "You didn't review it. You punished it." The lobby went very quiet. Even the secretary at the desk stopped typing. Klein's smile dropped completely. "Enough," he said, low. "Go, now." Ava didn't move. She rolled her chair a few inches forward like she was drawing a line. Outside, something shifted, not in the bikes, in the people. A small group at the front of the formation began walking toward the main doors. No rush, no aggression. Just a steady approach, boots on wet pavement, each step placed like it was measured. The police tried to intercept them, but again, no tension, no suddenness. The riders stopped at a respectful distance and waited. The officer said something. One rider answered. The officer looked back at the school, then, after a beat, stepped aside. Klein saw that through the glass and went pale. The group reached the front steps. The leader was an older man, broad shoulders, gray beard, worn black leather jacket. Marty recognized him immediately, Ava's father. He stopped at the base of the ramp and looked up at the bright orange out-of-service sign. He didn't touch it. He just stared at it for a long moment, as if he was letting the whole school watch him read it. Then he lifted his gaze to the security camera above the door. He looked directly into it. The effect was immediate, like he'd just spoken without making a sound. Behind him, the riders formed a loose line facing the building. Hundreds of them, standing still, the quiet, absolute. Klein's lips moved, but no words came out at first. He turned to the security staff. "Lock the doors." The security guard hesitated. "Sir, we can't lock them with people arriving." "Lock them!" Klein snapped. The guard moved toward the panel, and Marty, without knowing why, heard Ava's words from last night like a warning. "My dad doesn't forget things." Outside, Ava's father lifted one hand and pointed, not at the doors, not at the police, but at the ramp. Then he lowered his hand slowly and looked at the building again, eyes steady. In the lobby, Klein's phone buzzed. He glanced down, then his face tightened even more. Ron leaned in. "What?" Klein's voice came out clipped. "District superintendent is on his way, and the board president." Dana's eyes widened for the first time. "Here? Now?" Klein nodded, breathing shallow. "Now." Ava's father took one step closer to the door. He didn't bang, he didn't demand. He simply waited, like he had all the time in the world, and the school did not. Then, through the glass, he spoke. Just a few words, calm enough that Marty couldn't hear them, but clear enough that Marty could read the shape of one sentence on his lips. "We're here for him." Klein's eyes snapped to Marty, and in that moment, Marty understood with a cold clarity. Whatever was about to happen next, the spotlight was turning toward the one person in the building who had tried to fix the problem. Klein pointed at him, voice suddenly loud. "Hale, out here, now!" Marty's legs didn't move at first. Dr. Klein's finger stayed pointed at him like a verdict, and every habit Marty had built in 7 quiet years at Ridgeview told him to nod, comply, disappear. But outside, the riders were still there, hundreds of them, standing in the misty rain as if they'd come to weigh the school against its own words. Klein's voice snapped. "Hale, out now!" Ron hissed near Marty's shoulder. "Do it before this turns into a disaster." Ava watched Marty from the doorway, jaw tight. Donna Wexler clutched her tablet, eyes darting like she could calculate her way out of this. The front desk secretary looked like she might be sick. Marty took one slow breath, set his mop handle carefully against the wall, and walked to the doors. He pushed through. Cold, wet air hit his face. The entrance drive was packed with Harleys lined up with unnatural order. Bikes angled to block vehicles but leave the sidewalks open. Riders stood facing the school, helmets tucked under arms, hands visible, bodies still. No engines, no chanting. The silence felt designed. At the front, the older man from last night stepped forward, Ava's father. Up close, Marty saw the rain beating on worn black leather, the steady pale eyes, the kind of calm that didn't need permission. "Marty Hale," he said, like he'd said the name before. Marty's throat went dry. "Yes, sir." "You stayed late," the man said. "You kept a kid from falling," Marty swallowed. "The ramp was dangerous. And this morning they shut it down." The man's gaze flicked to the bright orange out-of-service sign, zip-tied to the rail, then back to Marty. "They punished you." "They said I wasn't authorized," Marty managed. The man nodded once as if confirming what he already knew. "My name is Calvin Callahan," he said, loud enough that the closest phones and cameras could catch it. "Hawk Ridge Charter." Marty heard a ripple of recognition from students and staff gathered on the sidewalks. Hawk Ridge did charity rides, escorts, fundraisers. People argued about what they were, but nobody argued they were ignored. Behind Marty, the doors opened. Dr. Klein stepped out like he owned the morning, suit perfect, smile polished for an audience. Ron and Dana followed, along with a police officer whose posture screamed he'd expected traffic control, not this. "Good morning," Klein called, voice bright and practiced. "We appreciate community involvement, but blocking school access is unacceptable. If you have concerns, we can schedule a meeting through proper channels." Callahan didn't raise his voice. "You're worried about access," he said calmly. "Then explain why that ramp is out of service today." Klein's smile tightened. "We have alternative accessible entrances." "The back door with the buzzer nobody answers," Callahan said. "Not angry, just factual." "That's your accessibility plan." Dana tried to step in. "Sir, internal compliance." Callahan lifted one finger, open and slow. Dana stopped mid-sentence like she'd been unplugged. Klein's jaw flexed. "This is school property. You are trespassing and disrupting operations." Callahan nodded toward Marty without looking away from Klein. "One of your employees did what your institution wouldn't," he said. "He fixed a hazard long enough for a student to get home safe." "And your response was an orange sign and a formal warning," Ron blurted. "He violated policy." Callahan's eyes flicked to Ron. "Policy didn't hold my daughter steady on that landing last night," he said. "He did." Marty felt heat crawl up his neck. He wanted to sink through the wet concrete. The news van down the drive edged closer. A reporter hurried forward, microphone up, camera trained on Callahan and, too quickly, on Marty. "Sir," the reporter called, "why are there hundreds of motorcycles at a school?" Callahan turned just enough for the lens. "We're not blocking kids," he said. "We're blocking neglect." Klein stepped forward, trying to cut it off. "This is a misunderstanding." Callahan didn't look at him. "My daughter uses that ramp," he said to the reporter. "It's been unsafe. Your school ignored it. An employee fixed it. They shut it down and disciplined him." The microphone swung toward Marty. "Are you the employee? Did you fix it?" Marty's heart slammed. He saw Klein stare, pure warning. He saw Ron's face, already writing Marty's future. He saw Ava in the doorway, fists tight on her wheels, willing him not to fold. "It was loose," Marty said, voice rough. "The hinge plate, the traction strip. It could have caught a wheel. It could have slipped." "Had you reported it before?" the reporter pressed. "Yes," Marty said, "more than once." Klein snapped. "Hale, that's enough." Callahan's head turned slightly. "Let him finish." Marty swallowed hard. "I filed tickets," he said, "sent photos, got automated replies." He glanced at the orange sign as if it might answer for him. They closed them. For a beat, nobody spoke. Even the rain felt quieter. Klein filled the gap with policy, voice louder now. "We shut it down because an unauthorized individual tampered with ADA infrastructure. This is about safety." Callahan's eyes moved to the ramp, straight, stable, then back to the out-of-service sign. He didn't argue. He just let people see the contradiction. A black SUV arrived at the edge of campus, forced to stop short because the drive was blocked. Two people got out and walked fast toward the steps, Superintendent Marsh and the board president, Mrs. Reddick. Marsh looked like a man who'd been dragged out of a meeting into a headline. Reddick looked like a headline herself. Klein hurried to greet them. "Superintendent, this is under control." Marsh cut him off with a glance at the crowd and the cameras. "Is it?" Reddick's eyes went straight to the ramp, then to the orange sign, then to Marty. "Mr. Hale," she said, voice level. "How long have you worked here?" 7 years, Marty answered barely. "And you've reported this ramp repeatedly?" "Yes, ma'am." "And you were disciplined for making it safer last night?" Marty felt Klein's gaze burning into his skull. "Yes." Reddick turned to Klein. "You disciplined him." Klein's voice tightened. "For liability. For procedure." Reddick's eyes flicked toward the news camera. "The liability is already here." Marsh looked at Callahan, careful now. "Calvin, move the bikes and we'll get buses in. We'll handle the ramp properly." Callahan didn't budge. "Properly like the last 90 days?" he asked softly. Marsh's jaw flexed. He looked at the officer near the steps who had been handed a thin plastic sleeve of papers by Callahan's people. Marsh took it, flipped through, and his face tightened. "These are maintenance tickets," Marsh said, voice flat. "Dates, photos, closures." Dana stepped in quickly. "Those closures were administrative." Marsh looked at her. Cut the sign down, he ordered a district security staffer. Now, and get me Ron Desert. Ron's head jerked up like he'd been called into court. You, Marsh said to Ron. Tool bag, we inspect that hinge plate this minute. If it's safe, it reopens today. If it's not, we put a contractor on it before tomorrow morning. Dana's mouth opened. Marsh didn't let her speak. Ava rolled forward onto the landing, voice steady. I got stuck there last night, she said. I waited because I didn't want to fall. He helped me, and you punished him. Reddick's gaze softened for half a second at Ava, then hardened again at Klein. Callahan turned back to the riders behind him and raised one hand. For the first time, the formation moved. Quiet, synchronized. Helmets came off across the line, hundreds of them held at their sides. No applause, no shouting, just a wall of people, uncovered, facing Marty like a silent salute. Marty's eyes stung. He blinked hard, terrified the cameras would catch it, terrified to let anyone see how much being seen hurt. Callahan looked at Marty again. You did right, he said, loud enough for the microphone to catch. That's all this is. The reporter swung back to Klein. Dr. Klein, did your school close repair tickets to avoid liability? Did you discipline a custodian for fixing an accessibility ramp? Klein's mouth worked, but his words came out tangled, half policy, half panic. We are committed to accessibility. There are processes. This is being reviewed. Then Callahan's phone buzzed in his hand. He glanced at the screen, and something in his eyes sharpened with a calm finality. Klein's head snapped toward Marty, like the past had suddenly become a weapon. Callahan lifted his gaze to Marty. Marty, he said, did you know the ramp was flagged in an inspection report last year, and the recommendation was ignored? Marty opened his mouth, but nothing came. He'd never seen that report, only the tickets that vanished. Marty stood there in the wet morning air, the question hanging between him and Calvin Callahan like a blade that had just been turned over to show its sharper edge. Did you know the ramp was flagged in an inspection report last year, and the recommendation was ignored? Marty's mouth opened, then closed. He felt every eye slide toward him again. Students, staff, cameras, police, bikers, like the whole campus had decided his answer mattered more than anyone else's. No, Marty said, voice rough. I never saw an inspection report. I just filed tickets. Ron made a sound like a scoff and a cough at the same time. Because you're not supposed to see those, he blurted, then immediately looked like he regretted saying it. Superintendent Marsh snapped his head toward Ron. Excuse me? Dana Wexler stepped forward, smooth as ice. Inspection documentation is handled at the district level. Staff custodians wouldn't be included. That's standard. Callahan nodded slowly, like he'd expected that exact sentence. Right, he said. So the people who get hurt never get to see the paper that explains why. Dr. Klein's jaw was tight enough to grind teeth. He forced his smile back on, the one he used when donors asked uncomfortable questions. Mr. Callahan, he said, I understand you're upset, but this is not the place to litigate internal documents. Callahan didn't look away. Then where was the place the last 90 days, he asked calmly, because I'm standing on it. A rider near the front stepped forward and handed Callahan a thin manila folder sealed in a clear sleeve, like it had been protected from weather and fingerprints. Callahan didn't open it yet. He held it up just enough for the camera to catch the bold header on the first page. Facility Safety and Accessibility Review, Ridge View, High Front Entrance Ramp, Immediate Action Recommended. Marty's stomach dropped. The words looked official, clean, the kind of document that should have ended the problem months ago. Marsh reached out without asking. Let me see that. Callahan passed the sleeve to him. Marsh flipped through, face tightening line by line. Mrs. Reddick, the board president, leaned in over his shoulder and read too. Her expression didn't change much. She was trained for public composure, but Marty saw something in her eyes sharpen like anger that had been waiting for a legitimate target. Klein stepped closer. Superintendent, we can discuss. Reddick cut him off. Warren, she said, voice low and even, this report is addressed to you. Klein's smile flickered. That doesn't mean I received it. Marsh didn't even look up. It's also addressed to district facilities and risk management. His eyes lifted to Dana Wexler. Dana's face stayed controlled, but her fingers tightened on her tablet. We process hundreds of documents. Marsh's voice went flat. This one says, immediate action recommended, and it has photos of the hinge plate, the exact hinge plate, with dates. Ron shifted his weight like a man trying to shrink without anyone noticing. Ava rolled her chair closer to the front steps, face set. So you knew, she said, loud enough to carry. You knew, and you still made me use that thing. Klein's posture stiffened. Ava, please. Don't, Ava snapped. Don't say my name like you care. The reporter stepped in again, microphone up. Superintendent Marsh, did the school ignore an accessibility safety report for a year? Marsh turned slightly, eyes on the camera, and Marty saw the calculation. Anything he said now would be played on loop by noon. We are reviewing the document, Marsh said carefully, and we will address any failures immediately. Callahan's voice slid in, calm and unavoidable. You can address it right now, he said. Cut the sign down, reopen the ramp Marty fixed, and tell the truth. You disciplined him because it was easier than admitting you didn't do your job. Klein's smile broke completely. He is not licensed, he snapped. He performed an unauthorized modification. If that ramp failed, if a student was injured, this school would be accountable, Reddick said, and her tone finally turned sharp. That's what accountability is. Klein looked at her, stunned for half a beat, then tried to recover. Madam President, with respect? You're going to stop talking, Reddick said, voice still controlled but iron underneath. Because every time you open your mouth, you make this worse. Silence hit again. Even the police officer at the steps shifted as if he'd just realized who held authority here. Marsh flipped to the back pages of the report and froze. There's an email chain, he said quietly. Donna stepped forward fast. That chain may include protected internal, Marsh kept reading. It includes a recommendation for a full repair estimate. He looked up, eyes narrowed. And a decision to defer it until after athletics capital improvements. A few students nearby whispered. Someone muttered, the new scoreboard. Klein's face flushed. That's not, Reddick's gaze pinned him. You spent money on a scoreboard while leaving an accessibility hazard in place? Klein's voice rose, losing polish. You can't conflate budgets like that. Different funding streams, different priorities, Ava said, voice tight. That's all it is. Callahan didn't raise his voice once. We're not here to embarrass you, he said. You embarrassed yourselves. We're here to make sure the people you ignore don't stay invisible. He turned slightly to the line of riders behind him. Helmets on the ground, he said softly. It wasn't a command barked out. It was a statement, like he was describing something already decided. Across the driveway, hundreds of helmets lowered to wet pavement at the same time, a heavy unified sound, plastic and composite and metal meeting concrete. It wasn't threatening, it was ceremonial. It felt like a marker placed at the scene of a crash. Students went quiet. The reporter's camera zoomed in. Marty's chest tightened. He didn't know what to do with the weight of it. This many strangers showing up in silence for a man who usually ate lunch alone in a utility room. Marsh looked at the orange sign again. He handed the report back to Callahan. Then he turned to Ron with a look that made Ron's face drain. Ron, Marsh said, you're going to inspect that ramp right now, with me, with the officer present, and with this camera rolling. His eyes flicked to the news crew. If it's safe, it reopens immediately. If it's unsafe, we document it and fix it before tomorrow. Dana swallowed. Superintendent, liability, Marsh cut her off. Liability's already here, Dana. The only question is whether we keep lying to it. Ron hesitated. Now, Marsh said. Ron moved like his shoes had suddenly gotten heavy. He gestured for a district security staffer to cut the zip ties. The staffer stepped to the ramp railing with a pocket knife, hands shaking slightly. Klein lunged forward. You can't, Reddick turned to him. Warren, she said quietly, if you interfere with this inspection, you will be escorted off campus. Klein stared at her as if he couldn't believe she'd said it out loud in front of witnesses. Then his eyes snapped to Marty again, sharp, furious, searching for a way to make this Marty's fault. The zip ties snapped. The orange sign sagged, then fell away, slapping wet pavement. The sound was small, but it felt like something breaking. Ron crouched at the hinge plate, his clipboard abandoned. He ran his hand along the bolts, tested the bracket, pressed down on the ramp lip with his weight. Marsh watched closely. The officer watched. The camera watched. Donna watched with the tight face of someone watching a house of cards lean. Marty stood off to the side, invisible and exposed at the same time. Ron straightened slowly. "The hinge plate is seated," he admitted. "Bolts are tight. Traction strip is applied." His eyes flicked toward Marty, quick and resentful. "It's stable," Marsh nodded once. "Then reopen it." Dana made a last attempt. "That doesn't certify. It certifies that we aren't going to hide behind orange plastic," Reddick said. Marsh turned to Marty. "Mr. Hale," he said, loud enough for the camera, "did you apply that traction strip last night?" Marty's throat tightened. He could feel Klein's stare burning holes in him. "Yes," Marty said. "Did you do it to reduce a slip hazard for a student?" "Yes," Marsh nodded. "Then I'm going to say this clearly," he said, facing the camera now. "The district appreciates staff who act to protect student safety. Any discipline issued for that action will be reviewed immediately." Reviewed wasn't rescinded, but it was a crack in the wall. Callahan's gaze held Marty's for a moment, steady. Ava's hands relaxed slightly on her wheels. Then Ava did something Marty didn't expect. She rolled forward onto the top landing and looked down the ramp. "Can I?" she asked Marsh, not Klein. Marsh hesitated for half a beat, then nodded. "Go ahead." Ava rolled down the front ramp, smooth, controlled, wheels gripping, chair steady. When she reached the bottom, she turned and faced the building like she was daring it to deny her again. Students clapped, some of them, not all, then stopped awkwardly, like applause felt wrong in a moment this raw. Phones were up everywhere now. The story was already leaving the campus. Klein's face had gone rigid. He stepped closer to Marsh and Reddick, lowering his voice, trying to regain control through proximity. "This is spiraling," he hissed. "You are letting a biker club dictate district policy on school grounds." Callahan heard him anyway. He didn't even turn. "We're not dictating," he said. "We're witnessing. That's what you're afraid of." The police officer near the steps cleared his throat. "Superintendent," he said quietly. "They haven't threatened anyone. They're just standing. It's peaceful." Marsh nodded. "I know." Reddick looked at Callahan. "Calvin," she said, "move the bikes so buses can get in. We will handle this internally. I give you my word there will be an investigation." Callahan didn't answer immediately. He looked past her at the building, then at the students, then at Marty. "What happens to him?" Callahan asked, nodding toward Marty. "Because you can investigate for 6 months while he gets squeezed out in 6 days. Reddick's jaw tightened. She knew that was true. "Mr. Hale will not be retaliated against," she said. Klein's head snapped. "You can't promise that." Reddick's eyes cut to him. "I can," she said, "and I am." Marsh took a breath and made the call. "Warren," he said, "you're being placed on administrative leave, pending review of this report and the related decisions. Hand your keys and badge to security." For a second, the world went absolutely still. Klein stared at him as if he'd been slapped. "You can't," he began, voice climbing. Marsh didn't flinch. "I can," he repeated, "and I am." Klein's face twisted, all polish finally gone. His eyes swung to Marty, and the hate there was naked now. No policy, no procedure, just rage that a man with a mop had accidentally cracked his perfect image. "This is on you," Klein said under his breath, barely audible, but Marty heard it anyway. "You don't even understand what you just did." Marty's hands shook, small tremors he couldn't stop. He wanted to say he hadn't done anything. He wanted to say he'd only tightened bolts. He wanted to say he'd been trying to keep a kid from falling in the rain, but the words wouldn't come. Security approached Klein carefully. Klein shoved past them, then stopped, realizing cameras were still rolling. He forced his expression into something almost controlled, but his eyes stayed wild. Callahan lifted one hand again. The riders moved in silence, helmets back in hands, bodies turning toward their bikes with the same disciplined calm. Engines stayed off. No one celebrated. No one taunted. They simply began to clear lanes methodically, opening space for buses, for parents, for the school to function again. It wasn't a retreat. It was proof they could stop whenever they chose. As the first lane opened, the reporter shoved the microphone toward Marty again. "Mr. Hale, do you feel vindicated?" Marty stared at the microphone like it was a spotlight that could burn him alive. Vindicated wasn't the word. He felt scared. He felt exposed. He felt like the quiet life he'd built to survive had just been ripped open in front of the whole town. Then his phone buzzed in his pocket. He hadn't even realized it was on at him. He usually left it in the closet. But today it was there, vibrating like a warning. He pulled it out and glanced at the screen. A private number, one new voicemail. And underneath it, a text from an unknown sender, just 6 words. "You should hear what Klein said." Marty stared at the text again, like the words might change if he blinked hard enough. "You should hear what Klein said." The lobby around him kept moving. Students flowing in late, teachers whispering in tight circles, the front desk phone ringing nonstop. Yet Marty felt locked in place, as if that message had put a hand on his chest. The reporter was still hovering with the microphone, waiting for Marty to say something neat and heroic. Marty couldn't. His fingers slid the phone back into his pocket, and he stepped away from the camera's line of sight, moving toward the side of the entrance where a trophy case cast a narrow shadow. Ava rolled up beside him, close enough that her shoulder almost touched the glass. "You got something?" she asked quietly. Marty's throat tightened. "I got a message." Ava's eyes flicked to the pocket where his phone sat. "From who?" "I don't know." Outside, bikes continued to clear lanes in calm, measured movements. The blockade was dissolving, not with fanfare, but with the same discipline it had arrived. A few riders stayed posted along the sidewalk like sentries. Their presence alone changed the way adults spoke. Lower voices, less arrogance. Superintendent Marsh's assistant stepped into the lobby and scanned until she found Marty. She lifted a hand. "Mr. Hale, Superintendent Marsh needs you in the conference room, right now." Marty's stomach dropped. "Why?" She didn't answer. She didn't have to. Ava's voice sharpened. "He's not in trouble." The assistant hesitated, then said, "It's just a statement. We need clarity." "Clarity," Ava repeated, bitter. "They've had clarity for a year." Marty forced his feet forward. He didn't want to go. But he'd learned something the hard way at Ridgeview. When people with titles asked you to step into a closed room, refusing didn't protect you. It just made you look guilty before you'd even spoken. He walked down the hallway toward the main office wing. The building smelled like wet jackets and floor wax. Students stared at him as he passed, some curious, some excited, some whispering his name like it was suddenly worth knowing. He hated that more than he expected. In the conference room, Superintendent Marsh sat at the head of a long table. Mrs. Reddick sat beside him, posture straight, hands folded like she was holding herself back. Donna Wexler was there too, tablet on the table, face neutral. A district security officer stood by the door. Ron Desert sat near the far end, red-faced and silent, his clipboard clutched like a flotation device. Dr. Klein wasn't there. That should have comforted Marty. It didn't. Marsh gestured to a chair. "Mr. Hale, sit." Marty sat. His hands were still damp from the rain. He rubbed his palms against his pants under the table, hoping nobody noticed. Marsh leaned forward. "I'm going to ask you direct questions. Answer direct, you understand?" "Yes," Marty said. Reddick's gaze stayed on Marty, not unkind, but intense. Like she'd realized too late that the smallest people in a system often saw the biggest truths. Marsh asked, "Did you work on the front entrance ramp last night?" "Yes." "Did a student in a wheelchair request help?" "Yes." "Did you feel the ramp presented an immediate safety hazard?" "Yes." Dana's voice slid in smoothly. "To be precise, Mr. Hale, you tightened existing hardware and applied traction material, correct?" Marty looked at her. "Yes." Donna nodded as if she'd just caged the truth inside the right words. "And you understand that such work requires authorization due to compliance and liability." Marty felt his jaw tighten. "I understand you were willing to leave it unsafe." Dana's eyes hardened a fraction. "That's not what I said." "It's what happened," Marty said, and his voice surprised him by not shaking. Reddick exhaled through her nose, a small sound of restrained fury. Marsh held up a hand before Dana could respond. "Mr. Hale, has anyone here instructed you to falsify reports or stop filing tickets?" Marty hesitated. Ron shifted, eyes flicking up like warning lights. "No one told me to falsify," Marty said carefully. "But tickets get closed, marked duplicate, marked future improvements, over and over." Marsh nodded. Have you kept copies? Marty shook his head. No, I don't get copies. It's all automated. Reddick leaned in. Do you have access to your own submissions? I can see them if I log into the system, Marty said. If they haven't been archived. Dana tapped her tablet. We can retrieve records. Marsh's eyes stayed on Marty. This morning you received a formal warning. Who issued it? Ron swallowed. I did, he muttered. Under whose direction? Marsh asked. Ron's eyes darted toward Dana, then toward the tabletop. District policy. That's not a person, Marsh said flatly. Ron's face flushed. Principal Klein wanted it documented. Reddick's gaze cut to Dana. And risk management was here at dawn, correct? Dana's expression didn't change. We responded to a compliance notification. Marsh leaned back slightly, then looked at Marty again. Mr. Hale, I'm going to be very clear. Retaliation against you will not be tolerated. If anyone pressures you, threatens you, or tries to shift blame onto you, you tell me directly. Understood? Marty nodded, but the words didn't settle in his chest. Promises sounded different when you were the one who could be erased with a single HR form. Marsh slid a sheet of paper across the table. This is a statement of facts. Read it. Marty scanned it. It was written in clean, careful language that made the situation sound like a minor procedural hiccup. The words unauthorized appeared more than once. The words urgent hazard did not appear at all. Marty's pulse thudded. Donna spoke softly. Sign that, and we can close the matter quickly. Reddick snapped her head toward Dana. Close the matter? Her tone cut like a wire. We are past closing matters. Donna didn't flinch. This is standard documentation. Marty's phone buzzed again in his pocket. He froze. Marsh noticed. You can check it. Marty pulled it out under the table, screen angled toward his lap. Another text from the unknown number. Voicemail is the short version. Meet me by the boiler room door. 10 minutes. Marty's throat went dry. Ava's voice echoed in his head. My dad doesn't forget things. Marty looked up. Superintendent, I got a message this morning. Donna's eyes sharpened. From whom? I don't know, Marty said. It says I should hear what Klein said. The room changed. You could feel it, the moment when an ugly rumor might become evidence. Marsh's posture tightened. Show me. Marty hesitated for half a beat, then turned the phone and placed it on the table, screen up. Reddick read the text. Her mouth hardened. Marsh's eyes narrowed. Dana's voice stayed smooth. Anonymous messages are often attempts to inflame. We should be cautious. Marsh didn't look at her. Mr. Hale, go meet them. Take security with you. If someone has evidence, we need it. Dana's head lifted. We cannot, Reddick cut in. We can, and we will. Marty stood, legs unsteady. The district security officer by the door shifted. I'll go with him. Marsh nodded once. Do not engage anyone alone. And Marty, he paused as if choosing a tone that would land. If this is what I think it is, you did not start this. You just stood in front of it. Marty didn't know how to answer that, so he just nodded again and walked out. The boiler room door was at the end of a service corridor most students never used, behind the cafeteria and past a set of storage closets. Marty's shoes squeaked on the linoleum. The security officer followed 2 steps behind, hand near his radio. The hallway was quieter here. No banners, no trophies, just painted cinder-block walls and the low, constant hum of machines that kept the school alive. A shadow moved near the boiler room door. A person stepped forward. It was the young security guard from earlier, the one who'd hesitated when Klein ordered the doors locked. He looked like he hadn't slept. His badge hung slightly crooked. His hands were empty, open. Marty stopped. You? The guard nodded once. Name's Ethan. He glanced at the district security officer, then back to Marty. I didn't know who to send it to, but you were the one they tried to bury. Marty's chest tightened. What is it? Ethan swallowed. I recorded Klein this morning. By accident at first. He lifted his phone slightly. I had my body cam off, but my phone voice memo was running. I forgot. I was documenting something else for my shift log, and then Klein started talking like he broke off, jaw clenched, like he didn't think anybody mattered. The district security officer's voice stayed neutral. Do you have the file? Ethan nodded. Yeah, and I've got screenshots too. Marty's mouth went dry. Screenshots of what? Email, Ethan said. Dana pulled it up on Klein's phone right in the lobby when she thought everyone was gone. I was behind the desk grabbing the visitor log. I saw it. He swallowed again. It was about the inspection report, about deferring repairs because of public optics and budget priorities. Marty felt dizzy, not from shock, but from how fast it was becoming real. Ethan held his phone out to Marty. I'll send it to you, and to Marsh, but I needed you to know. His eyes flicked toward Marty's face. He said your name. Marty's blood went cold. He said, what? Ethan's jaw tightened. He said he'd make you the reason it all happened. He said he'd tell the board you were reckless. He said, Ethan's voice dropped. He said, a janitor is replaceable. Marty stared at him. It wasn't that the statement surprised him. It was that hearing it out loud, captured, recorded, made it impossible to pretend this had ever been about policy. Marty's hands shook as he unlocked his phone. Ethan leaned in and sent the audio file in screenshots. The transfer bar filled slowly, like time had decided to drag. When it completed, Marty immediately forwarded everything to the contact Marsh's assistant had texted him earlier that morning, an official district address. His finger hovered over the audio file. He didn't want to listen. Not yet. Because once he heard it, he couldn't unhear it. The district security officer spoke into his radio quietly. We have something. Bringing them back now. They walked back toward the conference room. Marty's phone felt heavy in his hand, like it was made of metal. As they approached the main office wing, voices spilled into the hall, sharper now, tense. The conference room door was cracked open. Marty saw Marsh standing, phone to his ear, expression hard. Reddick was seated, hands pressed flat on the table like she was keeping herself anchored. Dana was standing too now, her tablet in her hands, face controlled but pale at the edges. Ron Desire was sweating. Marty stepped inside. Marsh lowered his phone. You got it? Marty held up his phone. Yes, Marsh motioned. Play it. Dana's voice snapped, the first crack in her smoothness. Superintendent, we should not play unverified audio in a mixed setting. Reddick's head turned slowly toward her. Dana, she said, quiet and deadly. Sit down. Dana froze, then she sat. Marty's thumb hovered. He looked at Marsh, then at Reddick, then he pressed play. Ethan's recording began with muffled movement, the scrape of a chair, a distant printer. Then Klein's voice, too clear, too confident, cut through. You want me to take the fall for this? Klein said, irritated, not worried. No, we make it about the custodian. Dana's voice answered, quieter. He touched ADA infrastructure. Exactly, Klein said. We say he did it without authorization. We close the narrative and we keep the ramp out of service until after the board walkthrough. I'm not having donors see a biker's kid rolling down our front entrance like we can't control our own property. Ron's voice hesitant. But the hinge plate, Klein cut him off. Ron, I don't care. We've got the back entrance. Let them use that. And if Hale keeps playing hero, I want paperwork. I want him scared. He's a janitor. He'll fold. Marty's stomach twisted. His fingers went numb. The room was silent except for the audio. Klein again, colder now. And delete the duplicate tickets. I don't want a trail that looks like we ignored it. You understand? Dana's voice clipped. We can mark them as consolidated. Klein. Do it. And if the board asks, we blame improper staff action and call it temporary closure for safety. That's the line. The recording ended with a click. For a full second, nobody moved. Then Marsh's face hardened into something Marty hadn't seen before. Pure, focused anger. Reddick exhaled once, slow, like she was forcing control back into her body. That, she said, voice shaking just slightly, is obstruction. Dana's mouth opened, then closed. She looked like a person realizing her own voice had become evidence. Ron stared at the tabletop like he wanted it to swallow him. Marsh turned to the district security officer. Where is Warren Klein right now? The officer checked his radio. He's in his office, gathering personal items. Security is with him. Marsh nodded. He stays there. Reddick's voice was quiet. Call district legal, now, and call the state accessibility compliance office. She looked at Marsh, eyes sharp. We do not handle this internally anymore. Dana finally found her voice, but it wasn't smooth now. Madam President, this is an internal deliberation. Reddick cut her off. That recording includes instructions to delete records. she said. "You can stop pretending this is deliberation." Dana's eyes flicked toward Marty, just for a moment, and Marty saw it. Not guilt, not empathy. Calculation. How to survive. Marsh looked at Marty. His tone changed, softer but steady. "Marty," he said, "I need you to understand something. You're going to be asked questions by investigators. You do not speak to media without counsel. The district will provide counsel if necessary. And—" he paused, then said it clearly. "Your warning is void. Effective immediately." Marty's chest tightened so hard it hurt. "Okay," he managed. Reddick leaned forward. "Mr. Hale," she said, "do you have any documentation of prior requests beyond the ticket system? Notes, photos, emails?" Marty shook his head. "Just the system." "We'll pull it," Marsh said, "and we'll preserve it. No deletions." Dinah's fingers tightened on her tablet. "Superintendent, we should ensure proper retention protocols." Marsh stared at her. "Dana, you are not touching the system." Dinah's face went still. A knock hit the conference room door. Everyone flinched at once. The door opened and a security staffer stepped in, eyes wide. "Superintendent," he said, "Klein is demanding to speak with you. He says he's being treated unfairly." Marsh's voice went flat. "He can demand all he wants." The security staffer swallowed. "Also, the news crew is still outside, and Calvin Callahan is asking if Marty is okay." Marty's throat tightened at the mention of Callahan's name, like it anchored him to something solid. Reddick stood. "Tell Callahan Mr. Hale is safe and that we are taking action." She looked at Marty again. "And tell him, thank you for forcing daylight." The security staffer nodded and stepped back out. Marty's phone buzzed again, another text from the unknown number. It wasn't Ethan this time. Ethan was standing just outside the room now, visible through the glass wall, face tense. Marty glanced down. "He's going to try to take your phone. Don't let him." Marty's blood went cold as he raised his eyes and saw, through the narrow window in the corridor, Dr. Klein stepping out of his office with 2 security staff beside him. Klein's face wasn't polished anymore. It was furious, and his gaze was locked straight onto Marty as he started walking toward the conference room door. Marty didn't move, not because he was brave, because his body didn't trust itself to do anything smart. Through the glass, Dr. Warren Klein walked down the corridor with 2 security staff flanking him, but he wasn't being escorted the way people imagined escorted. He was moving under his own power, chin high, eyes burning, like security was there to protect everyone else from him, not to guide him out. He stopped outside the conference room door and stared through the window straight at Marty. For a second, it felt like the entire building narrowed to that look. Then, Klein opened the door. "I need to speak to Superintendent Marsh," he said, voice steady enough to sound reasonable to anyone who hadn't just heard his recorded plan to bury a custodian. Marsh didn't sit down. He didn't gesture politely. He stayed standing, hands planted on the table edge, posture tight. "You're on administrative leave," Marsh said. "You're not speaking to anyone here without counsel." Klein's smile tried to appear, thin, performative. "I don't know what you think you heard, but I'm being railroaded based on some anonymous audio file." Reddick's eyes didn't blink. "It's your voice," she said. "It's Dana's voice. It's Ron's voice. This isn't anonymous. It's documented." Dana's head snapped toward Reddick, but she didn't speak. Klein's gaze flicked to Marty, fast, venomous, then back to Marsh. "This is a school," he said. "We have minors here. You're allowing a biker intimidation spectacle outside, and now you're entertaining illegally recorded conversations. Do you understand the exposure you're creating?" Marsh's tone didn't change. "You instructed staff to delete records." Klein spread his hand slightly. "No, I didn't. That audio can be edited, spliced, manufactured. We're in 2026. People fake voices for fun." Marty felt his chest tighten. The way Klein said it, smooth, certain, was the most dangerous thing about him. Klein could say the sky was green and make you doubt your own eyes. Reddick leaned forward, voice sharp. "Warren, stop. Every sentence you add becomes part of the file." Klein ignored her and stepped closer to the table, aiming himself like a projectile. "Where's the device?" he asked. Nobody answered. Klein's gaze dropped to Marty's hands. Marty realized with a sick jolt that his phone was still out, locked now, screen dark but still in his grip. He hadn't put it away after playing the recording. He'd been too rattled. Klein's eyes narrowed and his voice turned quieter. "Mr. Hale," he said like he was speaking to a student who'd been caught cheating. "Hand me your phone." Marty didn't respond. His fingers tightened. Marsh stepped between them, half a pace. "You are not taking anything from him." Klein's smile twitched. "I'm not taking it. I'm requesting the device that contains illegal evidence obtained without consent, which exposes the district, the students, and me." Ethan stood just outside the conference room now, visible through the open doorway in the corridor. Marty saw his face, pale, jaw tight, eyes locked on Klein like he was watching a predator slip a leash. Klein noticed him too. "Oh," Klein said, and his tone shifted, almost amused. "Ethan, that makes sense." Ethan didn't move. Klein turned back to Marsh. "Is this seriously what we're doing?" He nodded toward Ethan. "A rookie guard with a personal grudge makes a secret recording and suddenly I'm the villain in a biker morality play?" Reddick's voice cut in. "The recording isn't the whole case. The ramp report is addressed to you. The ticket closures align with your timeline. The sign went up this morning after Mr. Hale made it safe. You can't talk your way out of those facts." Klein's face hardened. "Facts?" he repeated. Then he pointed at Marty, the gesture sharp. "Here's a fact. This man did unauthorized work on ADA infrastructure. That is, by definition, reckless." Marty's throat tightened. He forced words out. "I tightened bolts." Klein's eyes flashed. "You altered it." "I kept someone from falling," Marty said, voice rising despite himself. Klein stepped forward again, too close, invading Marty's air. "And because you wanted to play hero," he said low, "you invited a mob onto school grounds." Marty's head jerked. "I didn't invite anyone." Klein's mouth curled. "Oh? Then explain why they're here for you." Marty felt the room tilt. It wasn't the accusation itself. It was how easily Klein made it sound plausible. In the wrong hands, that narrative could become the whole story. Shy janitor signals, biker gang, school gets threatened, principal forced to protect students. Dana finally spoke, voice controlled again. "We need to preserve all devices and communications," she said, looking at Marsh, "including Mr. Hale's phone, chain of custody." Reddick turned her head slowly toward Dana. "You're not managing chain of custody," she said. "You're part of the recording." Dana's lips pressed together. Klein's eyes stayed on Marty's phone. "Hand it over," he said again, this time with a quiet command. Marty's hands shook. He didn't want to hand it to Klein. He didn't want to hand it to anyone. That little device felt like the only thing preventing the whole world from snapping back into Klein's version of reality. Marsh spoke to the district security officer. "Take possession of Mr. Hale's phone," he said. "Document it. Put it in an evidence bag. It goes to legal, not to Warren, not to Dana." The officer nodded. "Yes, sir." Marty swallowed. His fingers didn't want to release, but he knew the difference now. Giving it to security under Marsh's order was not the same as handing it to Klein's hand. He passed the phone to the district security officer. The officer immediately slid it into a clear evidence bag and sealed it with a strip that left a visible tear line if broken. Klein watched, jaw tight, then snapped his gaze back to Marty, like Marty had just committed a personal betrayal. "You think that protects you?" Klein said under his breath. Reddick's voice was hard. "Warren, stop speaking to him." Klein ignored her, eyes locked on Marty. "You don't understand how quickly people forget you," he said softly. "You'll be celebrated for a day and then you'll go back to mopping, and I'll still be the one who—" "Enough," Marsh said, voice cutting through like a slammed door. "Security. He leaves. Now." The two security staff at the doorway shifted, stepping closer to Klein. "Sir, let's go." Klein turned on them, sudden and sharp. "Do not touch me." One guard held his palms up. "We're not—" Klein's hand shot out. Not a punch, not a shove, but a fast grab toward the evidence bag in the officer's hand. Everything happened in a half-second. The officer jerked the bag back. The seal crinkled. Klein's fingers caught air. One of the security staff stepped in and grabbed Klein's forearm to stop him. Klein spun, furious. "Get your hands off me!" His voice was loud enough that it carried down the hallway. Marty heard movement outside the conference room, the building reacting. Doors opening, footsteps, people's instincts pulling them toward drama like gravity. Marsh's face went stone hard. "Warren," he said, "that was an attempt to seize evidence." Klein's chest rose and fell, eyes wild now. "Evidence?" he snapped. "That's a janitor's phone." Reddick stood. "That phone is now part of a formal inquiry," she said. "You will not interfere again." Klein laughed once, bitter and sharp. "Formal inquiry," he repeated. He glanced at Dana like he expected backup. Dana didn't move. That seemed to enrage him more. He leaned closer to Marsh, voice low but trembling with anger. "You know what you're doing?" he hissed. "You're feeding the crowd. You're letting a biker club and a news camera tell you how to run a school." Marsh didn't blink. "No," he said. "You did that. The moment you decided optics mattered more than access." Klein's lips peeled back. "I was protecting this school." "You were protecting yourself," Reddick said. Klein's gaze snapped again to Marty. "And you," he said, voice rising, "you're going to regret." The district security officer stepped in, firm now. "Sir, that's enough." Klein jerked away, but the two security staff moved with him, guiding him backward toward the corridor. Not rough, but unyielding. As Klein was pushed out, he twisted his head, eyes still locked on Marty. "You think Callahan's your friend?" he spat. "You're a prop. When this ends, you'll be alone again." The door swung closed behind him, muffling his voice. For a moment, the conference room stayed frozen. Everyone breathed shallow. Even Ron looked like he might faint. Then Marsh exhaled once and turned to Marty. His tone softened just slightly. "You did not deserve any of that," he said. Marty stared at the tabletop. His hands were trembling so badly he had to press them against the edge of his chair to steady them. "He always talks like that," Marty said before he could stop himself. "Not that loud, but like that." Reddick's eyes narrowed. "Always," Marty swallowed. "He'd say things when no one else was around, like, if I wanted to keep my job, I should stay in my lane." Marty's throat tightened. "I did for years." Reddick's expression flickered. Anger, regret, then hardened again. "Not anymore," she said. Marsh turned to the district security officer. "Call legal. Tell them evidence has been preserved. Tell them Klein attempted to seize it." The officer nodded and stepped out. Donna Wexler lifted her chin, trying to reclaim ground. "Superintendent, with respect, you're escalating. We could handle this quietly." Marsh's eyes cut to her. "Quietly is how you deferred a ramp for a year." Dana's jaw tightened. "We had constraints." Reddick's voice was calm and lethal. "Dana, stop defending it. Your voice is on that recording. If you have counsel, you should call them." Dana's face went slightly pale. She stood, collecting her tablet with controlled hands. "I will cooperate fully," she said, each word measured. Marsh didn't respond. A knock hit the door again, lighter this time. The district security officer opened it a crack. "Superintendent, Callahan's here." Marty's heart thudded. "Here?" Reddick repeated. The officer nodded. "He came inside with Ava. He wants to speak with Marty. He said he won't bring anyone else." Marsh glanced at Marty. "Do you want that?" Marty didn't know what he wanted. He knew what he feared. Being used, being dragged into someone else's fight. But Callahan had shown up for his daughter first, not for Marty. Marty had seen that with his own eyes last night in the rain. He nodded once. "Okay." Marsh gestured toward the door. "Bring him in. Keep it brief." Callahan entered a moment later, and the room changed again, not with threat, but with presence. He carried himself like someone who didn't need to raise his voice to be heard. Ava rolled in behind him, eyes sharp, scanning faces like she was memorizing who had tried to erase her. Callahan looked at Marty first. Not Marsh, not Reddick. Marty. "You all right?" he asked. Marty swallowed. "I don't know." Callahan nodded as if that was the most honest answer in the world. "Fair." Reddick spoke carefully. "Mr. Callahan, we're taking action. Klein has been placed on leave. The ramp is open. The warning against Mr. Hale has been voided. This will be investigated." Callahan listened without interrupting, then looked at Reddick. "Good," he said. "Now make sure the investigation doesn't turn into paperwork that disappears." Marsh's voice was steady. "It won't." Callahan's gaze moved to Ron. Ron flinched like a guilty man watching a judge walk in. "Ron," Callahan said, calm. "How many times did Marty submit tickets?" Ron swallowed. I don't have the number." Callahan nodded once. "You will." he said. Not a threat, an expectation. Ava rolled closer to Marty. He tried to take your phone, she said quietly. Marty nodded. He tried. Ava's jaw clenched. He thinks he owns the story. Callahan looked at Marty again, voice lower now. He doesn't, he said. Not anymore. Marty felt something twist in his chest. I didn't ask for any of this, he said, and his voice cracked on the last word. Callahan didn't flinch at the emotion. I know, he said. That's why it matters. Marsh cleared his throat. Calvin, we need the bikes fully cleared, he said. Buses are still backed up. Callahan nodded once. They'll be gone in 10 minutes. Reddick leaned forward, eyes on Callahan. Mr. Callahan, why did you bring so many? Callahan's gaze didn't waver. Because one bike gets ignored, he said. 10 bikes get dismissed. Hundreds? He paused. Hundreds make it impossible to pretend you didn't see us. He turned slightly toward Marty again. And Marty, he said, you're going to get calls, reporters, people looking for a clean headline. Don't give them your piece. Marty didn't answer. He didn't know what peace looked like anymore. Callahan nodded to Ava. Ava rolled toward the door, then stopped and looked back at Marty. You're not invisible, she said, simple and hard. Then she left. Callahan followed her out. The room stayed quiet after they were gone. The silence wasn't ceremonial this time. It was heavy with consequences. Marsh looked at Marty. We're moving you off-site for the rest of the day, he said. Not as punishment, as protection. District office. You'll give a formal statement with legal present. Then you go home. Marty's throat tightened. Home, he repeated, as if it was a place he remembered. Reddick added, and you will not return to Ridgeview under Klein's authority. He's done. Marsh's phone buzzed on the table. He glanced at it and his expression hardened again. State Compliance Office is on the line, he said. Reddick's eyes narrowed. Already? Marsh nodded once. And legal says someone attempted to access the ticket system remotely 10 minutes ago. Dana's head lifted sharply. That could be routine. Marsh stared at her. No, he said, voice flat. It was a deletion attempt. Marty's stomach dropped. Because if someone was trying to erase the trail right now, it meant Klein's plan wasn't dead yet. It was just changing hands. Marsh kept the phone pressed to his ear while he stared at Dana like he was trying to decide whether she was a symptom or the source. Yes, he said into the call, voice clipped. Ridgeview High, front entrance ramp. Accessibility safety report dated last year. We've preserved evidence and initiated administrative actions. We will cooperate fully. He listened, eyes narrowing. Reddick stood beside him, arms folded, jaw tight. Ron sat like a man shrinking into his chair by millimeters, sweat beading at his hairline. Marsh's eyes flicked to Marty. Yes, he said into the phone again. We have the employee who filed the tickets. Yes, we have audio indicating record deletion was discussed. He paused, then his mouth hardened into a thin line. Understood. Thank you. Marsh ended the call and set the phone down carefully, like he was preventing it from shattering. Reddick spoke first. State Compliance is sending someone, Marsh nodded. Today. They want system access logs preserved within the hour. They also want the ramp taken out of district hands and certified. Dana lifted her chin, trying to re-enter the conversation with control. We can provide logs. We maintain retention. Marsh cut her off. Legal says someone attempted to delete ticket records 10 minutes ago. Dana's eyes narrowed. Attempted how? Marsh stared at her. Remote login, admin level. It hit the facility's ticket queue and tried to purge duplicates. Ron's throat bobbed. He looked down at his clipboard like it might shield him. Reddick turned to the district security officer at the door. Lockdown access, she said. Facility system, email, everything. No one touches anything until IT forensics are here. Dana's voice sharpened. Madam President, you can't freeze operational systems. Schools rely on... Reddick's gaze snapped to her. Dana, stop! You are not driving this bus anymore. Dana's face stayed neutral, but her eyes hardened. You're reacting emotionally. I'm reacting legally, Reddick said. And ethically. Marsh pointed at Ron. Ron, whose credentials have admin access to the ticket queue. Ron swallowed. Mine, Dana's, 2 people at District IT. And Klein had viewing privileges. Viewing, Marsh repeated. Not admin. Ron hesitated. He asked, We set it up so he could see pending items. Reddick's voice went low. So he could manage optics. Ron didn't answer. Marsh leaned forward, palms on the table. Ron, tell me right now, did you attempt to delete anything this morning? Ron's face went red. No. Did you give your login to anyone? Marsh asked. Ron shook his head too fast. No, never. Dana tapped her tablet screen like she could still steer the room through procedure. If there was a deletion attempt, it could be automated housekeeping. Duplicate tickets are consolidated. Marsh's eyes cut to her. After an accessibility incident goes public, you call it housekeeping? Dana's jaw tightened. I'm explaining normal function. Reddick took one step closer to the table, voice calm and final. Dana Wexler, you're being placed on administrative leave pending investigation, effective immediately. Turn over your district devices to security. For the first time, Dana's composure actually broke. Not dramatically, just a slight flash, the smallest crack in the mask. You can't do that, Dana said. You don't have authority. I do, Reddick said, and I am. Dana's eyes flicked to Marsh like she expected him to intervene. He didn't. Dana's mouth tightened. She stood slowly, set her tablet down, then hesitated as if deciding whether to fight. The room was too full of witnesses. She turned her devices over to the district security officer with controlled hands. Ron watched it happen with the expression of a man realizing the floor was no longer solid. Marsh turned to Marty. His tone shifted, still firm but human. Marty, we're moving you now. District office. Legal is waiting. You're not walking out alone. Marty nodded because his throat wouldn't form words. Ethan appeared in the doorway again, hovering like he didn't know if he was allowed to exist in this level of trouble. Marsh saw him and gestured him in. Ethan, Marsh said, you did the right thing. You will also give a statement. You won't do it alone. Ethan swallowed hard and nodded. Yes, sir. Reddick looked at Marty, then at Ethan. And both of you, she said, do not speak to media, not one sentence, not until counsel says so. Marty's stomach twisted because he could already picture what the cameras would do to a single, out-of-context quote. Marsh nodded toward the security officer. Escort them out through the service exit, he said. Avoid the front. The service exit led behind the cafeteria, down the same cinder-block corridor Marty had walked earlier. The building's sound faded as they moved away from the lobby. No chatter, no phones, no crowd noise, just the hum of machinery and the squeak of shoes. Marty's phone was already bagged and sealed with evidence tape. He felt strange without it, like he'd lost a limb. The district security officer carried it in a clear bag like it was radioactive. At the back exit, the rain had eased into a mist. A black district SUV waited with a driver inside. Another vehicle sat behind it. Marty paused on the threshold and looked back once, at the hallway he'd spent years moving through like a ghost. Ethan stood beside him, jaw clenched. I'm sorry, Ethan muttered. If I'd turned that memo off. Marty shook his head. If you hadn't recorded it, he said quietly, he'd be writing my story right now. Ethan swallowed and nodded like that hurt to hear. They climbed into the SUV. The driver pulled out immediately. As they rolled along the edge of campus, Marty saw the tail end of the scene at the front drive. The bikes were mostly cleared now, lanes open, buses crawling in. Riders stood in small groups near the sidewalks, helmets on, faces unreadable. The news van was still there, cameras swinging between the school entrance and the last line of motorcycles. Calvin Callahan stood near the curb, speaking quietly with a police officer. Ava was beside him, chair angled so she could see everything without having to crane her neck. She spotted the district SUV and tracked it with her eyes. Marty didn't know if she could see him through tinted glass, but he lifted his hand anyway. Ava's expression didn't soften into a smile. She simply raised two fingers, brief, firm, like a vow. The SUV turned and left campus. The district office was 20 minutes away. The roads were wet and busy, commuters slowing down when they spotted the last of the motorcycles dispersing like a story ending before people understood it. Marty sat in the back seat, hands clasped, trying not to shake. Ethan sat beside him, staring forward like he was bracing for impact. The district security officer glanced back once. You two okay? Marty didn't answer. Ethan said, no. The officer nodded as if no was acceptable. When they arrived, they didn't go through the front entrance. They pulled into a side lot, then through a badge-controlled door into a bland hallway that smelled like printer toner and carpet shampoo. Legal was waiting in a small conference room with no windows. 2 attorneys, one from the district, one outside counsel. A laptop open, a recorder on the table, a stack of folders that looked like they'd been printed in a rush. Marsh was already there when Marty walked in, face set like he'd been running on adrenaline for hours. Reddick arrived a minute later, coat damp, eyes sharp. One of the attorneys stood. "Mr. Hale, I'm Karen Liu, outside counsel retained by the district for this matter. This is not a disciplinary meeting. You are not in trouble. We are here to document your experience and preserve evidence." Marty nodded, throat tight. Karen gestured to a chair. "Sit. Take water if you need it." Marty sat. The chair squeaked. The sound felt too loud. Karen looked at him steadily. "First question, how many times did you submit ramp-related tickets?" Marty swallowed. "A lot." "Give your best estimate," Karen said. Marty stared at his hands. "Once every couple weeks when it got bad, sometimes more." He forced himself to look up. "Maybe 20, 30, over the year." Marsh's jaw tightened. Karen nodded and typed. "Did anyone ever tell you to stop submitting?" Marty hesitated. "Not directly." "Indirectly," she pressed. Marty exhaled. "Ron would say, 'It's in the system.' Klein would say," his voice almost failed. "He'd say I was making the school look messy, that I should focus on presentation." Reddick's mouth hardened. Karen asked, "Did you ever see a contractor come assess the ramp?" Marty shook his head. "No, district guys came once maybe and tightened the same bolts I tightened. Then it would drift again." Karen looked at Ethan next. "Ethan, you created the recording. Walk us through the circumstances." Ethan's hands were shaking slightly. He clasped them together. "I use voice memos for shift notes," he said. "I turned it on earlier, forgot it was running. Klein and Dana were near the front desk talking like nobody was around. I realized after. I didn't go looking for it." Karen nodded slowly. "When did you discover it?" "After the bikes showed up," Ethan said. "I knew something was wrong. I listened. I heard Marty's name. I heard the word delete." Ethan's voice tightened. "I panicked. I didn't know who to trust." Marsh nodded once. "You did the right thing." Karen glanced at Marsh. "We need to preserve that original file from Ethan's device as well," she said. "Not just copies, for authenticity." Ethan went pale. "You're taking my phone too?" Karen's voice stayed calm. "Temporarily. You'll get it back. We'll image it and return it. You can have a personal attorney if you want one, but if you want the recording to hold up, we need proper chain of custody." Ethan swallowed, nodded, and slid his phone across the table like it burned. The district security officer immediately bagged it in evidence tape the same way they had Marty's. Marsh's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his expression tightened. "IT confirms deletion attempt came from an admin account," he said, "but not Dana's, not Ron's." Reddick's eyes narrowed. "Then whose?" Marsh's jaw flexed. "A legacy admin account that should have been disabled 6 months ago. It still had access." Karen's fingers paused over the keyboard. "That's a separate failure," she said quietly. "And a serious one." Reddick leaned forward. "Meaning someone could be inside the system without leaving their own name on the login." Marsh nodded once. "Yes." Marty felt his stomach drop. "So they can still erase it," he said, voice low. Marsh's eyes met his. "Not now," he said. "We locked it down as soon as we saw the attempt. Forensics is pulling backups from last night and the week before. If anyone deleted anything earlier, we'll see it." "Who would do that?" Marty asked before he could stop himself. Nobody answered immediately. Karen finally said, "People do it when they think their careers depend on it." The room went quiet again. Then Reddick spoke, voice hard. "Warren Klein isn't done," she said. "He's going to spin this." As if summoned by the words, a district communication staffer knocked and stepped in, face tense. "Madam President, Superintendent, media is escalating. Klein's attorney just sent a statement to several outlets. He's claiming he was threatened by an organized group and that the district is capitulating under intimidation." Marsh's mouth tightened. "Of course he is," the staffer added, "and he's claiming Mr. Hale acted recklessly and endangered students." Marty's throat tightened, recklessly, endangered, the exact narrative Klein had said out loud in the recording. Karen's gaze snapped to Marty. "This is why you do not speak publicly," she said. "Not because you did wrong, but because people like him will twist anything you give them." Marsh looked at the communications staffer. "Issue one statement," he said. "One. District is cooperating with state compliance investigation and has secured evidence. Nothing else." The staffer nodded and left. Ethan's voice came out rough. "He's blaming Marty." Reddick's eyes were cold. "He can try." Marsh turned to Karen. "What can we do right now to protect Marty?" Karen didn't hesitate. "Written directive against retaliation, immediate reassignment away from Ridgeview administration, paid leave option if he wants it, and we document any contact from Klein or his allies." Marsh nodded. "Do it." Marty stared at the tabletop. Paid leave sounded like a dream and a trap at the same time. Time off meant time to be forgotten. Karen asked, "Marty, are you comfortable being reassigned to another site temporarily?" Marty hesitated. "I don't want to lose my job." "You won't," Marsh said firmly. Reddick leaned in slightly, voice quieter. "Mr. Hale, I can't undo years of being unseen in a day," she said, "but I can make sure you're not punished for finally being noticed." Marty's chest tightened. He nodded once because anything more would break his voice. Marsh's phone buzzed again. He read, then looked up. "Callahan's club is gone," he said. "They cleared the last bikes, peacefully." Marty felt a strange emptiness at that, like a pillar had been pulled away and he suddenly had to stand on his own legs again. Karen closed her laptop halfway. "We're going to continue the statement in sections," she said. "But first I want to document something. Did you ever receive training on ADA-related reporting procedures?" Marty shook his head. "They tell us to submit tickets. That's it." Karen nodded. "Good." She looked at Marsh and Reddick. "That matters." The district security officer's radio crackled softly. He listened, then his posture stiffened. "Superintendent," he said, "we have an update." Marsh looked up. "Go." The officer's voice was careful. "Someone tried to access Ethan's personnel file at Ridgeview 5 minutes ago. From an admin terminal in the main office." Marty's blood went cold. Because Klein was supposed to be contained, and yet someone was already moving inside the building to target the one person who recorded him. Ethan's face went pale. "They're coming for me now." Marsh's eyes hardened into something dangerous. "No," he said, voice low. "They just told me exactly where to look." Marsh didn't even sit back down. The moment the district security officer said personnel file, something in Marsh's face changed, like the situation stopped being a mess and became a target. "Which terminal?" Marsh asked. The officer pressed his earpiece, listening, then answered, "Ridgeview main office, admin terminal near the attendance desk." Reddick's eyes narrowed. "So someone inside the building is using an internal machine." Marsh nodded once. "And they're not just panicking," he said. "They're hunting." Ethan's breathing went shallow. "They can pull my address," he said quietly. "My emergency contacts, my—" Karen Lou raised a hand, calm but urgent. "We're going to assume they were trying exactly that. Superintendent, we need immediate protective steps." Marsh was already moving. He grabbed his phone, thumb flying. "IT," he said into the call the second it connected. "Lock Ridgeview admin terminals now. Remote disable. Pull access logs on the legacy account and freeze the ticket system database. I want a full forensic image. No exceptions." He listened, jaw tight, then added, "I don't care if it breaks someone's printer. Do it." Reddick turned to the district security officer. "Dispatch to Ridgeview, 2 units. Tell them to go straight to the main office and secure the terminal." The officer nodded, already speaking into his radio. Marty sat frozen, watching it happen like a storm forming right in front of him. He'd spent years believing Ridgeview ran on predictable rules. You cleaned, you filed tickets, you stayed out of the way, and the people in suits made decisions above your head. Now the rules were breaking, and the people with power were moving like they actually feared consequences. Karen leaned toward Ethan. "Do you feel safe going home today?" Ethan swallowed. "No." Marty realized he didn't either. Marsh ended his call and looked at Marty and Ethan. "You're staying here," he said. "Secure floor. No one gets to you without clearance." Marty's mouth opened. I'm not asking what you want," Marsh said, not unkindly. I'm telling you what's safest until we know who's still inside that building trying to erase a trail. Reddick's phone buzzed. She glanced down, then her face tightened. State compliance is on site, she said. They just walked into the lobby. Marsh exhaled once, like the day kept handing him heavier weights. Bring them up. A minute later, the door opened and a woman stepped in with a badge clipped to a leather folio. Mid-40s, hair pulled back tight, expression trained into calm. Not a district employee, not impressed by district titles. I'm Isabel Ortega, she said. State accessibility compliance. I was told there's an active situation involving ADA access, record retention, and potential retaliation. Marsh nodded. There is. Ortega's gaze moved, quick, precise, taking in Karen's laptop, the evidence bags, Marty's posture, Ethan's pale face. Who are they? She asked. Witnesses, Reddick said. Ortega held Marsh's eyes. I need to be clear, she said. If records are being altered right now, it escalates. And if the ramp has been tampered with since the public incident this morning, that's evidence tampering on top of safety negligence. Marsh's jaw clenched. We just received notice of a deletion attempt. Ortega didn't look surprised. That's why I'm here, Karen said. We have a recording indicating intent to delete. Ortega held out her hand. I need copies, and I need the originals preserved with chain of custody. The district security officer lifted the evidence bag slightly. Already sealed, Ortega nodded once. Good. Then her eyes cut to Marsh. I'm going to Ridgeview, she said. Now. Marsh hesitated. We're locking down the building. Ortega's voice didn't rise, but it didn't bend either. Superintendent, I didn't drive here to read your prepared statements in a carpeted room. I need to see that ramp. I need to see the alternative entrance. And I need to see who has access to what. Today. Reddick glanced at Marsh. She's right. Marsh looked back at Marty and Ethan. You two are not coming, he said immediately. Ethan's head snapped up. But, no, Marsh said. You're witnesses. They're trying to access your file. That's enough. You stay protected. Marty didn't argue. Part of him wanted to be anywhere except Ridgeview right now. Another part of him hated that the building had become a battleground, and he wasn't even allowed to see what they were doing with his work. Ortega looked at Marty, and for the first time her expression softened a fraction. Not sympathy, more like professional recognition. You're the custodian who filed the tickets, she said. Marty nodded once. Ortega's gaze sharpened. You will provide a full statement to my office, she said. Not later. Today. Marty's throat tightened. Okay. Marsh's phone buzzed again. He glanced down and his face went harder. What? Reddick asked. District security is at Ridgeview, Marsh said. They reached the admin terminal. Whoever was using it is gone. Ethan swallowed. Gone how? Marsh's eyes flicked to him. They logged out and walked away before security got there. Ortega's jaw tightened. So they knew security was coming. Marsh nodded. They had eyes in the building. Reddick's voice went low. Or they are the eyes. Karen leaned forward. We need to pull camera footage from the main office area. Marsh nodded once. Already ordered. Ortega opened her folio. Superintendent, I want a list of every staff member with access to admin terminals and ticketing systems, including legacy accounts. I also want the name of whoever manages Ridgeview's internal office keys and who had physical access to the attendance desk this morning. Ron, who'd been silent for long minutes, finally spoke, voice thin. That's front office staff. Ortega's eyes cut to him. Names, she said. Ron swallowed. Mrs. Larkin, attendance, and Assistant Principal Jacobs has an office right there. Reddick's mouth hardened. Jacobs was Klein's right hand. Marsh's jaw flexed. And he's still in the building. Ortega closed her folio with a sharp snap. Then let's go. Marsh pointed at the district security officer. Keep Marty and Ethan here, he said. No one in or out. If anyone calls for them, you verify with me directly. The officer nodded. Yes, sir. Marsh and Reddick moved to leave with Ortega and Karen, but before they reached the door, Marsh's phone rang again. He answered, listened, and something in his face shifted into something darker than anger. What now? Reddick demanded. Marsh's voice came out tight. Front ramp, Ridgeview. Ortega stepped closer. What happened? Marsh stared at the wall for a second, like he was picturing the scene through someone else's words. Someone reattached an out-of-service sign, he said, and He paused, then set it flat. They found the hinge bolts loosened, the same hinge plate. Marty's blood went cold. Ortega's eyes hardened. Was anyone injured? Marsh listened again, then answered, Not yet. A student's chair slipped at the bottom lip, but they caught themselves. Security saw it and stopped traffic. Marty felt his stomach drop like a stone. The ramp had been stable. Ron had confirmed it. Marsh had confirmed it. The sign was down. Ava rolled down it smoothly. Someone had gone back and undone it. Ethan whispered, They're trying to make it look like Marty's work failed. Marty couldn't speak. His throat locked. Ortega's voice was sharp. Seal the ramp as a potential evidence site. No one touches it. No one. And get a certified contractor to document condition immediately. Marsh was already speaking into his phone. I want tape up. I want footage. I want a list of every person who could have touched that rail since it reopened. Reddick's eyes flashed. This is sabotage. Karen's expression went cold. This is an attempt to reframe liability. Ortega nodded once. And it's stupid, she said, because now it's criminal. Marsh turned back toward Marty and Ethan, voice firm. You're staying here, he repeated. Do not go back to Ridgeview. Do you understand me? Marty nodded, but inside him something broke loose. Rage, fear, disbelief, all tangled. He'd tightened bolts in the rain to keep a girl safe, and now someone was loosening them to make him the villain. Marsh left with Ortega and Reddick and Karen in a tight formation, like a team entering a fire. The door closed and the room felt suddenly too quiet. The district security officer stood by the door like a statue. Bathroom is down the hall, he said. If you need anything, you tell me. Marty stared at the table. Ethan stared at the sealed evidence bag where his phone used to be, like he could still hear Klein's voice inside the plastic. Minutes passed like hours. Then another knock came, harder this time. The security officer opened the door a crack, spoke quietly to someone, then shut it again. He turned back to Marty and Ethan, face tight. What? Ethan asked. The officer hesitated. There's a situation at Ridgeview. Marty's heart slammed. What kind of situation? The officer spoke carefully. Local news is broadcasting live. They're saying an accessibility ramp repair failed, and that a staff member may have performed unauthorized modifications. They're saying the district is under pressure from an organized group, and that the school is concerned for student safety. Ethan's face went pale. That's Klein's statement. The officer nodded once. It's already out. Marty's hands curled into fists under the table. They're blaming me. The officer didn't deny it. Ethan's voice came out raw. They're doing it right now while Marsh is driving back. Marty pushed back his chair. The scrape of the legs on carpet sounded violent in the small room. I need to go, he said. The officer's hand lifted immediately. No. Marty's chest rose and fell, breath turning hot. They're ruining me. They're trying, the officer said, firm. And if you walk into that building right now, you give them a picture they can use. Ethan stood too, shaking. They'll come for my file again, he said. They already tried. Marty's jaw clenched. So we just sit here while they... The officer's radio crackled. He listened, eyes narrowing. Then his posture stiffened. Marty's heart hammered. What? The officer's voice went lower. Ridgeview Security just reported something else. Ethan swallowed. Say it. The officer stared at Marty. They found your tool bag, he said. Marty went still. My tool bag is at Ridgeview, in my closet. The officer nodded once, expression tight. It's not in your closet anymore. It's at the base of the ramp. Marty's blood turned to ice. Ethan's voice cracked. They planted it. The officer lifted his radio again, listening, then lowered it slowly like he didn't want to say the next part out loud. What else? Marty whispered. The officer met Marty's eyes. They're saying the bag was open, he said, and the bolts that were loosened are sitting right next to it. Marty didn't hear his own chair scrape back until it was already done. They put my bag at the ramp, he said, but it came out like he was repeating someone else's sentence. They put bolts next to it. The district security officer didn't soften his tone. Yes, which is why you are not leaving this building. Marty took one step toward the door anyway, pure instinct. Fight the lie, run to the scene, fix it with his hands the way he fixed everything else. The officer stepped into his path without touching him. Mr. Hale, he said, voice firmer now, if you walk into that, you become the picture they want. The headline writes itself. Ethan's breathing went shallow. "They're making it look like he sabotaged it," he said, voice cracking. "So the district looks forced to shut it down again." Marty clenched his jaw so hard it hurt. "My tool bag was in my closet," he said. "It's behind a locked door." The officer nodded once. "Then someone had access." Marty stared at him. "Only me. Ron has the master key for maintenance closets," but he stopped, because saying Ron's name out loud made it too real. The officer's eyes stayed steady. "Then Ron is part of the access chain," he said simply. "That doesn't prove he did it. It proves he can't claim nobody could." Ethan swallowed hard. "And they tried to pull my personnel file from an admin terminal. Someone inside Ridgeview is moving like they're cleaning up." Marty felt the rage rise hot and stupid. "I just tightened bolts," he said, voice rough. "That's all I did. And now they're loosening them on purpose. They're putting my bag there like I'm some—" He couldn't finish the word. Criminal, saboteur, threat. The officer's radio crackled again. He turned slightly, listened, then spoke into it in a low voice. "Copy. Keep the site sealed." He looked back at Marty. "Superintendent Marsh is at Ridgeview. State compliance is with him. They've taped the ramp. They're treating it as evidence." Marty's chest heaved. "They're already on TV saying it failed." The officer nodded. "And the district is issuing one statement. Ramp is secured as an evidence site. State compliance is on scene. No conclusions until investigation is complete." Ethan let out a bitter laugh that didn't have humor in it. "That won't stop the clip," he said. "People will just hear Janitor's bag and decide." Marty turned toward the conference room window, seeing nothing, just fluorescent reflections. "What do they do to me if everyone decides?" he asked quietly. The officer didn't dodge it. "That's why we document your location," he said. "You've been here. Your badge scans prove it. Cameras here prove it. You have an alibi that doesn't rely on anyone's word." Marty's hands were shaking again. He forced them to unclench. "My bag," he said, thinking out loud now. "If it's open, they could have put anything in it, or taken something out." Ethan's eyes flicked up. "Do you keep anything in there that could be twisted?" Marty swallowed. "Wrenches, socket set, grip tape, spare bolts. Nothing illegal." He paused. "But if they put bolts next to it, they could be making it look like I removed them and tossed them on the ground." The officer said, "Marsh already ordered photos before anyone touches it." Marty tried to breathe through the tightness. "The bolts they found, are they the same bolts?" he asked. "I don't know," the officer admitted, "but Ortega will." The name gave Marty a thin thread of relief. Ortega didn't sound like a woman who got fooled by props. Another radio burst. The officer listened longer this time, face tightening. He answered with a short, "Understood," then ended the transmission. Ethan's voice was small. "What now?" The officer hesitated. "They're pulling hallway camera footage around the maintenance closets," he said, "and the office terminal footage." Marty's pulse spiked. "There are cameras by my closet?" "Service corridor," the officer said, "not inside, but angles. And key card logs on the back hallway door." Marty suddenly remembered something that made his stomach turn. "The closet doesn't have a card reader," he said. "It's key only." The officer nodded slowly. "Then whoever moved the bag had a key." Marty's mouth went dry. Ron. Klein's inner circle. A handful of people with rings of keys they never lost. Ethan's voice sharpened. So someone could have walked in, opened his closet, taken the bag, carried it straight to the ramp, loosened bolts, dropped them next to it, and walked away. The officer didn't argue. "Yes." Marty's eyes burned. "And the news will say, 'Found at the scene,' like that means something." The officer spoke with a blunt honesty Marty wasn't used to from people in authority. "It will mean something to people who want it to." Marty turned toward the officer. "Let me call Callahan," he said suddenly. "He knows how these stories spread. He can—" "You don't have your phone," the officer reminded him, not unkind. Marty looked down at his empty hands like he'd forgotten that part. He felt trapped in a way that was different from being trapped by silence. This was being trapped while someone else told his story for him. The officer glanced at Ethan. "You remember Callahan's number?" Ethan hesitated. "No, I didn't." Marty looked around the room, desperate. "The district line," he said. "There has to be a phone." The officer nodded once, then motioned toward a desk phone on the far wall. "You can use that," he said. "Speaker only. I stay in the room. Marty didn't care. He crossed the room fast, hands shaking as he lifted the receiver. He didn't know Callahan's number either, but he knew one person who would. Ava. He dialed the main number for Ridgeview and asked the front desk for Ava Callahan. The secretary tried to stall, but Marty said, "Tell her it's Marty. It's urgent." Seconds later, Ava's voice came through, tight and controlled. "Marty?" Marty swallowed hard. "They found my tool bag at the ramp," he said. "They're saying the ramp failed. They're blaming me." Ava's inhale was sharp. "I know. My phone is blowing up." "Can you get your dad?" Marty asked. Ava didn't hesitate. "He's with the club clearing out. I'll patch him." The line clicked. Marty heard muffled voices in the background, then Calvin Callahan's voice, low and steady. "Marty." Marty's throat tightened at the simple fact that Callahan said his name like it mattered. "They planted my bag," Marty said. "They loosened bolts after it reopened. They're trying to make it look like my fix failed." Callahan's voice didn't rise. "I figured," he said. "Ortega called me 2 minutes ago. She's not happy." Marty blinked. "Ortega called you?" Callahan answered like it was obvious. "When a state investigator smells sabotage, she asks who has eyes on the ground. I have eyes." Marty's chest tightened. "They're already broadcasting it." "I know," Callahan said. "Listen to me. Do not step back on that campus right now." "I'm not," Marty said, voice shaking. "I'm at the district office. Security has me here." "Good," Callahan said. "That's your alibi. That's your shield." Marty swallowed. "What do I do?" Callahan paused just long enough that Marty felt the weight of every second. "You tell the truth," he said, "and you let the facts do the punching, you understand?" Marty couldn't help it. Anger bled into his voice. "Facts don't trend." Callahan's tone stayed calm. "Then we make the facts impossible to ignore." Marty stared at the phone. "How?" Callahan didn't brag. He didn't posture. He just said, "I have video from last night." Marty's pulse jumped. "Video?" "A couple of my people were close when Ava called me," Callahan said. "They filmed the ramp before you touched it. They filmed you tightening bolts. They filmed the hinge plate seated afterward. They filmed Ava rolling down clean. Timestamps." Marty's breath caught. And, Callahan continued, "I have video from this morning of the ramp reopened and stable after Ron inspected it, then closed again with a sign that magically reappeared. We've got a timeline." Marty felt dizzy. "Then show it." Callahan's voice was firm. "We will. When council tells us how. Because the moment we dump footage without strategy, they'll scream biker propaganda and muddy it." Marty hated that it made sense. Callahan added, "Ortega is pulling the school cameras right now. If someone carried your bag from that closet to the ramp, it's on video." Marty's throat tightened. "Unless they turned cameras off." Callahan's voice went colder by a degree. "Then that's on video too. Cameras going dark is its own clue." Marty's eyes stung. "I didn't think people did this." "They do when they've lived years without anyone pushing back," Callahan said. Ava's voice came back on the line, sharp. "Marty, I saw something earlier." Marty's heart slammed. "What?" Ava spoke fast, like she didn't want to lose nerve. "After you left, I went by the cafeteria hall. I saw Assistant Principal Jacobs by the service corridor. He had a key ring. He was talking to Mrs. Larkin like he was telling her what to do." Marty went cold. "Jacobs?" Ava's voice tightened. He looked angry, not scared, like he was still running things. The district security officer in the room shifted slightly, listening harder. Marty said, "Can you tell Ortega that?" Callahan answered immediately. "Already did," Ava told her. "Ortega asked for Jacobs to be kept in the building." Marty's breath caught. "Kept how?" Callahan's voice stayed level. "As in, don't let him leave until they image the admin terminal and check the key logs." Ethan whispered, "They're going to grab the wrong guy, and Jacobs will talk his way out." Callahan heard the whisper anyway. "He can talk," Callahan said, "but he can't talk out of timestamps." Marty's hands were shaking so hard the receiver trembled. "They put bolts next to my bag," he said. "If those bolts match the hinge—" Callahan cut him off. "Ortega already flagged something," he said. "The bolts sitting next to the bag were dry. No rain film, no grime. She said the hinge bolts had water and corrosion marks. These looked like they came from a clean bin." Marty felt a sick surge of relief. So they're not from the ramp. Or they're replacement staged to look like originals, Callahan said. Either way, it's staging. Ava's voice turned hard. They think everyone's stupid. Callahan's tone softened slightly. They think everyone's tired, he said. Big difference. Marty swallowed. What about my job? Callahan didn't promise the world. He said, your job isn't the story now. Your safety is, and making sure they can't keep doing this to the next kid. Marty closed his eyes for a second, trying to hold on to that. Callahan's voice sharpened again. One more thing, Marty. Don't trust messages. Don't trust calls. If anyone reaches out saying they can help you or make this go away, you tell Marsh and Ortega, you hear me? Marty nodded, even though Callahan couldn't see. Yes, Ava said quietly. We're not letting them bury you. The words hit Marty harder than he expected. He didn't know what to say, so he said the only true thing. Thank you. Callahan ended it with a simple, stay put. The line clicked dead. Marty set the receiver down slowly. His hands were clammy. Ethan stared at him like he was waiting for either hope or disaster. They have video, Marty said. Ethan's eyes widened. Good video? Marty nodded. Timestamps. The district security officer exhaled once. That helps, he said. A lot. Marty's jaw clenched. It won't stop them from trying. No, the officer agreed, but it changes what trying costs them. Minutes crawled. Then the officer's radio crackled again, sharper this time. He listened, face tightening, then his eyes snapped to Marty. What? Marty asked, heart thudding. The officer spoke carefully, like he didn't want to set off an explosion too early. They pulled service corridor footage, he said, from the camera that faces the maintenance closets. Ethan's voice came out thin. And? The officer lifted his gaze to Marty. They have someone on camera carrying a tool bag, he said, from your corridor toward the front. Marty's blood turned to ice. Who? The officer hesitated just a fraction of a second too long. Marty felt the answer before it came. It's Ron Desire, the officer said, and he's not alone. Assistant Principal Jacobs is with him. For a second, Marty didn't process the names. His brain grabbed the image first, someone carrying a tool bag down the service corridor, and only then did the words land like punches. Ron Desire, Marty repeated, voice hollow. And Jacobs. Ethan's face drained. That's the guy who runs maintenance and the guy who runs the building. The district security officer didn't embellish. They're walking together. They're moving fast. Jacobs has his phone in his hand. Ron has your bag. Marty's mouth went dry. So they had the key, he whispered. They went into my closet. The officer nodded once. And they took it out. Ethan's hands clenched. They framed him. Marty felt a surge of heat so sharp it made his vision shimmer. Not rage like shouting, rage like pressure in his chest, like his lungs were too small for the air. Where's Marsh? Marty asked. The officer was already moving toward the door. On site. I'm getting him on the line. He stepped into the hallway, spoke low into his radio, then into a phone call. Marty and Ethan stood in the windowless room like two people waiting for a verdict they already knew was coming. Ethan swallowed. You're not going down for this, he said, but it sounded like he was trying to convince himself. Marty's hands shook. They were going to make it look like my work failed, he said. They were going to say I loosened bolts and left them on the ground. Then they'd call me reckless. Then they'd say I endangered students. Then they'd erase him. The door opened. The officer came back in, face tight. Marsh has the clip, he said. Ortega has it too. They're moving. Marty's heart pounded. Moving where? Ridgeview main office, the officer said. They're pulling Ron and Jacobs into separate rooms, and Marty, he paused, eyes steady. Ortega wants you on speaker for one question. Marty froze. Now? The officer nodded and set the desk phone to speaker, dialing a number. A click, then a woman's voice. Isabel Ortega, calm, controlled, the kind of calm that meant she'd already decided what mattered. Mr. Hale, Ortega said. Marty swallowed. Yes. Confirm for the record, Ortega said. Your tool bag was in a locked maintenance closet at Ridgeview when you left campus this morning. Yes, Marty said, behind a key-locked door. And you did not authorize anyone to remove it, Ortega said. No, Marty replied. A second voice cut in, Superintendent Marsh, tight with anger. "Marty, did you see Ron DeZere remove that bag at any point?" "No," Marty said. "I was already at the district office." "Good," Marsh said, voice clipped. "Stay there." Ortega's voice returned. "Mr. Hale, do you recognize Assistant Principal Jacobs?" Marty hesitated. "Yes, I see him sometimes in the hall. He's around the main office." "Has he ever had access to maintenance keys?" Ortega asked. Marty's throat tightened. "Not officially, but he's had keys for everything else, and he talks like he can get whatever he wants." Ortega paused, then said, "Understood." The line clicked off. Marty stared at the phone, feeling like he'd just spoken into a machine that could either protect him or crush him. Ethan exhaled shakily. "They're finally looking at the right people," Ethan said. Marty didn't answer. His mind kept circling one fact. Ron and Jacobs didn't do this alone unless they were stupid. And Ron wasn't stupid. The district security officer's radio crackled again. He listened, face hardening, then answered, "Copy." He looked at Marty. "You're not going to like this." Marty's stomach dropped. "What now?" "Klein's attorney just went live," the officer said. "They're claiming Klein warned the district about rogue staff and that he's being scapegoated to satisfy public pressure." Ethan made a sound like a choke. "He's still talking?" Marty's jaw clenched. "Of course he is," he said. "He can't stop." The officer continued. "And they're implying the sabotage was done by maintenance, meaning Ron, without Klein's knowledge." Marty felt cold spread through him. "They're going to cut Ron loose," he whispered. Ethan's eyes widened. "Ron will take the fall to protect Klein." Marty's throat tightened. "Or Ron will talk." Ethan stared at him. "You think Ron will talk?" Marty didn't want to believe in anything, but he'd worked under Ron long enough to know one thing. Ron protected himself first. Always. The officer's phone buzzed. He checked it, then said, "Ortega wants the club footage. Callahan is delivering it." Ethan blinked. "How?" "Direct to legal," the officer said. "Time-stamped files, original device metadata. They're being careful." Marty sank back into the chair, breathing shallow. The truth was assembling piece by piece like a trap closing, and the people who built the trap were still moving. Minutes dragged. The fluorescent light hummed. Ethan rubbed his hands together like he was trying to warm up from the inside. Then the door opened again. Marsh stepped in, no suit jacket now, sleeves rolled up, hair slightly damp, face tight with exhaustion and fury. Ortega followed behind him, coat spotted with rain, folio in her hand. Karen Lou came in last, expression controlled but sharpened by urgency. Marsh didn't sit. He looked at Marty and Ethan like he was checking they were still intact. "We have them," Marsh said. Ethan stood halfway. "Ron and Jacobs?" Ortega answered. "Ron is in custody," she said. Marty's chest tightened. "Custody? Like arrested?" Ortega's eyes stayed steady. "Detained pending questioning and evidence collection. Police are involved now." Ethan let out a breath that sounded like it hurt. "And Jacobs?" Marty asked. Marsh's jaw clenched. "Jacobs tried to leave the building," he said. Ortega stopped him at the side exit. He claimed he had an emergency. Ortega's voice was flat. His emergency was his car. Karen stepped forward. "We have the corridor footage," she said. "We have the admin terminal access logs. We have the attempted personnel file access. And we have the ramp sabotage documented by a certified contractor who arrived within the hour." Marty's pulse spiked. "What did the contractor say?" Karen didn't sugarcoat it. "The hinge bolts were loosened after the ramp was reopened. The pattern of loosened hardware indicates intentional action, not vibration or wear." Ethan's voice shook. "So it wasn't Marty." Marsh's eyes cut toward him. "No," he said. "It wasn't Marty." Marty felt his knees weaken with relief so sharp it almost made him nauseous. He hadn't realized how hard he'd been holding himself together until that one sentence gave him permission to breathe. Ortega opened her folio and slid a printed still image across the table. A frame from the corridor camera, Ron carrying the tool bag, Jacobs walking beside him, head turned as if talking. The timestamp burned in the corner like a brand. Marty stared at the image until it blurred. Marsh spoke quietly, almost to himself. "They didn't just sabotage the ramp," he said. "They endangered a student to win a narrative." Reddick stepped into the room then, phone in hand, eyes hard. "Local news is still running the Janitor reckless line," she said. But our statement goes out in 5 minutes. And this time we're not being vague. Karen lifted her gaze. Careful, she warned. We can confirm evidence exists without naming individuals until charges are filed. Reddick nodded once, jaw tight. Then we confirm sabotage. We confirm evidence. We confirm Mr. Hale was not on campus. And we confirm state compliance is involved. Marsh looked at Marty. I'm sorry, he said, for what they tried to do to you. Marty swallowed. Why? He asked. The question came out small, almost childish. Why keep pushing it that far? Ortega answered instead of Marsh, voice clipped with certainty. Because once the cameras show up, people like that don't fix problems, she said. They fix stories. Ethan's voice cracked. What did Ron say? Marsh's eyes narrowed. Ron asked for a lawyer immediately, he said, but he also said something else before he stopped talking. Marty's throat tightened. What? Marsh's mouth hardened. He said, I was told to handle it. Silence hit. Ortega's eyes sharpened. By whom? She asked, already knowing there were only a few answers that mattered. Marsh exhaled once. He didn't say. Not yet. Karen's gaze moved to Marty. And that, she said quietly, is why you stay protected. Because if Ron decides he can save himself by offering a new target, he'll throw names. Ethan swallowed. Like Klein. Reddick's phone buzzed again. She read, then her expression turned even colder. Klein is on the way to a press conference, she said. Not official, some attorney-led performance. He's going to stand in front of cameras and talk about safety and threats and rogue employees. Marsh's face went rigid. He's still trying to control it. Ortega's voice stayed calm. Let him talk, she said. The moment he says something that contradicts the evidence, he hands us more. Marty's stomach twisted. He's going to say my name, Marty said. Marsh looked at him. He won't, he said, because the district statement will hit first. And if he does, he'll be doing it under active investigation with documented sabotage. Reddick's gaze locked on Marty. We are not letting your name be the shield for their negligence, she said. Karen slid another paper toward Marty, a formal directive. This is your protection order, she said. No contact from Ridgeview admin, no retaliation, reassignment effective immediately, paid administrative leave available at your request, and council contact information. Marty stared at it. The words looked unreal, like a different world. Ethan's face tightened. And me? He asked quietly. Karen nodded. Same, she said. Witness protection measures, not the dramatic kind, the practical kind. Marty's throat tightened. What about the ramp? He asked. Ortega answered. It stays closed as an evidence site until the contractor certifies repair, she said. But we are installing a temporary certified ramp access at the front and staffing the side entrance. Not a buzzer. A person. Marty's chest tightened again. This time, not with fear, but with something close to bitter vindication. A person. The simplest fix the whole time. Reddick looked at Marsh. Statement goes out now, she said, and then we call the board into emergency session. Marsh nodded, then glanced at Ortega. What's next on your end? Ortega's eyes were hard. Next is criminal referral for sabotage and records tampering, she said, and next is me asking why a legacy admin account still had access. Karen added, and next is depositions. The room was heavy with the kind of consequences people usually only talked about in hypotheticals. Marty sat very still, trying to understand that he was no longer the one being dragged. The system was finally being forced to look at itself. Ethan's voice came out rough. Callahan's footage. Is it enough? Marsh's jaw tightened. It helps, he said. But the strongest thing we have is not Callahan's footage. He tapped the corridor still photo on the table. It's district cameras, district logs, district timestamps. Reddick exhaled slowly. Our own building finally testified. Marty's throat tightened. And Klein? He asked. Marsh's eyes didn't blink. Klein is now the center of the investigation, he said, not you. For the first time all day, Marty felt his shoulders drop a fraction. Then Karen's phone buzzed. She read the screen, and her expression shifted, small, sharp. What? Marsh asked. Karen looked up. Jacobs is asking to speak, she said. He says he can explain everything. If he gets immunity. Ortega's eyes narrowed. Immunity, she repeated. Reddick's mouth hardened. So he's ready to trade. Marsh stared at the table for a beat, then looked at Marty. This is where it turns, he said quietly. Marty swallowed. Turns how? Ortega answered, voice flat as stone. Either Jacobs tells the truth, she said, or he tells a story. Marsh's phone buzzed at the same time. He checked it, then his face hardened again. Klein just stepped up to microphones, he said. Marty's chest tightened. He's live, Marsh nodded once. And he's smiling. Klein's press conference was already live when Marsh's phone buzzed again. He didn't need to say a word. Everyone in the room felt it. The comm staffer pushed a laptop to the center of the table, clicked the stream open, and turned the volume up. Klein stood under a portable awning outside some building Marty didn't recognize. District office annex, maybe. 2 microphones on a stand. A neat row of cameras. A small crowd of reporters. And behind him, an American flag and the district banner, like he'd staged a backdrop to make himself look like the only responsible adult left. He was smiling. Not a warm smile. The smile of a man who believed the story still belonged to him. Thank you for being here, Klein said smoothly. This morning, Ridgeview High experienced an unprecedented disruption. Our priority, always, has been student safety. Before we continue, tell us in the comments where you're watching this from. Marty sat motionless, eyes fixed on the screen. He could almost hear the version of Klein that spoke in empty hallways and locked offices, the one Ethan's recording had captured. But what the cameras were getting now was the public mask. Calm, concerned, reasonable. Klein continued. There has been outside pressure. There have been individuals arriving on campus in an organized manner, creating a climate that made staff and students feel unsafe. Reddick's fingers tightened on her phone. He's doing it, she muttered. Marsh's jaw flexed. Karen Lou didn't react, but Marty saw her eyes track every phrase like she was building a legal map. Klein raised his hand slightly. Let me be clear. We respect community voices, but we cannot allow intimidation to dictate school operations. Ortega's expression didn't change. He wants the word intimidation in the headline, she said calmly. He wants the narrative to be fear, not negligence. Klein's smile widened a fraction, like he could feel the cameras leaning in. We also learned that an employee performed unauthorized modifications to an accessibility structure on school property. Marty felt his stomach turn hard. Klein kept going, voice gentle as poison. While I recognize that some actions may come from a place of wanting to help, unauthorized work on ADA infrastructure can create serious hazards. This morning, that hazard became apparent. Ethan made a small sound in his throat, pure disgust. Klein nodded solemnly. A ramp that had been altered failed. A student nearly fell. We immediately shut it down to prevent injury. Marty's hands clenched under the table so tightly his nails bit into his palms. On screen, a reporter raised a hand. Dr. Klein, the district says there was evidence of sabotage after the ramp was reopened. Are you denying that? Klein's smile didn't move. I'm not here to speculate, he said. I'm here to say we took swift action to protect students. Another reporter pressed. Are you saying a custodian caused the ramp to fail? Klein tilted his head slightly, the posture of a man pretending he didn't want to say what he was about to say. I'm saying, he replied carefully, that unauthorized modifications can lead to unpredictable outcomes. Marty heard it as clearly as if Klein had shouted his name. Karen leaned forward and shut the laptop halfway, cutting the sound. That's defamatory by implication, she said. He's trying to stay just outside direct accusation while still handing the crowd a target. Reddick's eyes were hard. He's handing them Marty. Marsh looked at Marty. He won't get away with it. Marty didn't answer. His throat had locked again, like it did when he was cornered in a hallway and someone spoke to him as if he were furniture. Ortega stood. I'm going back, she said. Marsh snapped his gaze up. Ortega, I'm not going back to Ridgeview, Ortega said, voice flat. I'm going to where he's standing. Karen's eyes sharpened. You can't ambush a press conference. Ortega picked up her folio. I can serve notice of an active state investigation and warn the public against interference with evidence, she said. And if he keeps making statements that contradict documented facts, he's giving you more. Marsh hesitated, then nodded once. District security goes with you. Ortega turned toward the door, then stopped and looked back at Marty. Mr. Hale, she said, you stay here. Understood? Marty managed a nod. Ortega left with 2 security staff. The room felt colder without her, like she'd taken a weapon with her. Reddick's phone buzzed. She read, then looked up. Our statement is ready, she said. Marsh nodded. Send it. Reddick's thumb hit the screen. Now, she said, like she was pulling a trigger. On the laptop, muted and half closed, Klein kept talking. Cameras flashed, reporters scribbled. He looked comfortable, like he was bathing in attention. Ethan's voice came out tight. They believed him before. They'll believe him again. Karen shook her head slightly. Not with what we have, she said. Not if we move fast. Marsh's phone rang. He answered, listened. Then his face tightened. IT just confirmed Jacobs accessed the legacy admin account, he said. They found the password stored in a notes file on his desktop. He used it today. Marty's heart slammed. So Jacobs didn't just walk with Ron, Marsh said. He did the digital part too. Ethan swallowed. So Jacobs can tie Klein to it. Karen's gaze sharpened. If Jacobs decides to, she said, or if he decides to throw someone else. Reddick lifted her chin. He asked for immunity, she reminded them. He's bargaining. Marsh's phone buzzed again, a text this time. He read it, then turned the screen toward Karen and Reddick. It was a photo, Jacobs in a small office at Ridgeview, seated, looking pale and furious. A district security officer standing behind him, and on the table in front of Jacobs, his own phone in an evidence bag, sealed. Marsh exhaled. They've got Jacobs locked down. Karen nodded. Good. Now we get him on record. A knock came, then the comms staffer stepped back in, breathless. Superintendent, our statement just hit. Local news is pivoting. They're saying district alleges sabotage and that a tool bag was moved. They're asking who moved it. Marsh's eyes narrowed. Tell them we won't name anyone pending charges, he said, but we confirm the custodian was not on campus when the sabotage occurred. The comms staffer nodded and left again. Marty's head felt full of pressure. So, they're not saying my name, he whispered. Not anymore, Reddick said. Not if we keep control of the facts. Ethan looked at Marty, voice rough. It's working, he said, like he didn't trust himself to believe it. Then Marsh's phone rang again. He answered, listened, and his expression changed, sharp, immediate. Put her on speaker, Marsh said. A click. Ortega's voice filled the room, wind and distant crowd noise behind it. I'm on site at Klein's press conference, Ortega said. He's still talking. Marsh's jaw tightened. Do you have eyes on him? Yes, Ortega said. And you're not going to like this. He just claimed the ramp failed due to unauthorized changes and implied the custodian fled responsibility. Marty's stomach dropped. Karen's voice was calm but edged. Can you intervene without escalating? Ortega didn't hesitate. I'm stepping in now. They heard movement through the phone, footsteps on gravel, someone saying, Ma'am, you can't. Then Ortega's voice rose just enough to cut through the air. I'm Isabel Ortega with State Accessibility Compliance, she announced loud and clear. This site is under active investigation. Any statements intended to mislead the public or interfere with evidence collection will be documented. On the laptop, even muted, Marty could see Klein's smile falter for the first time. His eyes flicked toward Ortega like a man seeing a door lock in front of him. Ortega continued, voice steady. The ramp in question has been sealed as a potential evidence site. Preliminary documentation indicates intentional loosening of hardware after reopening. The employee being referenced was not present at the time of sabotage. The crowd stirred. Reporters surged. Cameras swiveled toward Ortega. Klein leaned toward his microphone, trying to regain the floor. Marty could read his lips even without sound. This is inappropriate. Ortega didn't stop. Additionally, she said, state investigators have obtained surveillance footage showing a tool bag being moved from a secured maintenance area toward the ramp by individuals other than Mr. Hale. Marty's chest tightened. That was it. the line that changed everything. On screen, Klein's face went tight. He shifted, shoulders stiffening. He tried to smile again, but it didn't land. His eyes darted left and right, searching for an ally, a way out, a person to blame. A reporter shouted, "Who moved it?" Ortega answered, "That will be disclosed through proper process, not through speculation. But I will say this. Framing a worker by staging tools and hardware near an accessibility hazard is not just unethical. It is criminal." The word criminal rippled through the crowd like electricity. Klein stepped forward half a pace, voice rising, attempting outrage. "This is a politicized attack," he snapped. "You're letting an outside group—" Ortega cut him off clean. "This has nothing to do with motorcycles," she said. "This is about a ramp, a report, a pattern of ignored tickets, and an attempt to erase and rewrite record." Klein's jaw clenched. "I have done nothing but protect." Ortega's tone stayed even. "Then you won't mind cooperating," she said. Marsh leaned closer to the speakerphone. "Ortega, law enforcement?" Ortega's voice stayed steady. "Police are here," she said. "They're moving in." On the laptop screen, two officers in plain clothes appeared at the edge of the frame, approaching Klein from behind the cameras. Klein noticed them late. His head turned, his eyes widened a fraction. He leaned into the microphone one last time, voice suddenly sharper, less controlled. Marty could almost hear it even without volume. "This is a setup," Klein said, face tight. "A mob, a corrupt investigator, a superintendent trying to save himself." Ortega's voice came through the phone, calm and final. "Dr. Warren Klein," she said, "you are being instructed not to leave this area pending questioning related to evidence tampering and obstruction." Klein's smile was gone now, completely. He looked straight at the nearest camera, eyes bright with anger, and said something Marty couldn't hear but could read on his lips with sick clarity. "Find the janitor." Marty's blood ran cold. Then, one of the plainclothes officers touched Klein's arm. Klein jerked away. The second officer stepped in. Klein's hand shot up, not to strike, but to push the microphone stand as if knocking it over could knock over reality. The stand wobbled, cameras jolted, reporters shouted, and then, on the screen, the officer's hands went behind Klein's back. Metal flashed, Klein's shoulders tightened, his mouth opened to speak again, and the cuffs closed.